Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special guest segment of the Home and Away podcast. We have a good friend of the pod, Daniel Sperry, here, back from his very recent experience in front of David Lee, the new chief soccer officer at Sporting Kansas City. Daniel was at the press conference today. A lot of us watched the live stream, so I think there's a lot to get into around this conversation. Before we get into the details of just kind of who David Lee is and kind of the commentary that you had today, my first question for you is, what did you make of him? Like, as the guy himself, as the new president of soccer operations in Sporting Kansas City.
I think I found him to be just, I found him to be pretty genuine. I don't know. I feel like I've done enough of these things where a lot of people have said the right things and maybe not done them, or you couldn't feel the confidence and conviction behind the way that they said certain things. And I don't get that impression from Mr. Lee at all. I found him to be really genuine and authentic and honest in kind of his assessment of things. And I think, hearing someone be excited about Kansas City, but also very much like talk about how clearly he views this club towards the top of the MLS structure and MLS sphere, and where this club should be in terms of standing and hierarchy. I think a lot of those things sounded pretty genuine. And this is a guy who's been in the league for over a decade now, dating back to some of his first gigs with New York Red Bulls before he moved over to NYCFC. So we're talking about a guy that has seen Sporting win a lot of things and be at the top, and also have seen them be at their worst. And, I think so far that first impression from him was that he really understand, like, of all the hires and people that we had heard potentially be in the running, this is a guy who comes in and is hitting the ground running because he knows MLS. He knows how teams, we can talk about it later here, but he put off a lot of numbers about, turnaround in MLS and how quickly and easy it is to actually compete and turn a team around. And I think that there's maybe not easy, but how possible it is really to do so. And I think hearing some of those things, hearing the excitement level, but also knowing that he has a very deep knowledge of how this league works and what it will take to get a team to be successful in this league, I think was really good, first and foremost. And I think they've got a really smart guy making decisions for them in the years to come.
Yeah, that was my first takeaway, is just he's a really sharp person, but also a fairly genuine person. We talked, there was some commentary about this just now on the Discord, and I don't want to turn everything into a comparison of Peter Vermees or the previous regime, but there's just a level of genuine is the best word I can come up with. It just seems like a guy who is actually saying what he thinks. This is not a guy who's like trying to sell us a line of bullshit. I do think there was some stuff in there that was meant to pump things up, the commentary, this is the best job in the league and all that kind of stuff. I mean, right. You're going to hear that kind of thing in a press conference like this. But when he actually started speaking in detail about how he wants to go about doing the business of rebuilding this team, you hear a very thoughtful person with very clear structures in mind of how he means to go about doing this. And you believe him. Right? It doesn't sound like a guy trying to sell you something. It sounds like a guy with a clear idea of what he wants to go accomplish. And I think that is probably the most warming thing of all of this. And we've been pretty high on this since we heard about the announcement. And we've said that we think that this could be like a really good candidate. And when you hear him talk for half an hour, you believe that he is the right candidate, and say whatever you want about how long it took to get to this place and the process involved, and whether or not we had the confidence necessary in the decision makers to get this type of person in place. All signs point to they've knocked it out of the park, candidly.
Yeah, and I think even from clearly, this is a guy who has hired multiple head coaches. This is a guy who has had to do roster turnover. He's had to do it as the league has changed and grown. He's had to do it under the constraints of working with City Football Group and being part of that, where maybe you're not the top choice in how things are going about, the how things are happening, right? Your input may not always be the final say, despite you being in charge of soccer operations at NYCFC. He's seen it all, and I think he has a very clear understanding of what's ahead, and he knows the league. I just think that can be something that's so valuable in looking at a guy like this, and I think that there's a lot of things that have been said about the team and club in the past that need to change, right? They need to be more, at least maybe not totally analytics driven, but at least for the love of God, use them to make some informed decisions, right? Because at a base level, they weren't really doing that very much. I was talking with someone that came, someone DM'd me about one of the quotes that I was talking about the analytics, and where he says that building out the department and staff is a short and medium term goal of his. Like, you look at that, like, the question was, Sporting doesn't have an analytics department. No, they don't. They have not had something like that running for a very long time. And so, like, you have a guy that's going to use that. You have a smart guy. You have someone that has done it, has lifted trophies in modern MLS. And I think is someone that understands too, like, why I asked him about being the transactional nature that the club has to be a part of, for sustainability, not only financially, but with players, and being able to recruit more players because you're able to, sell that you transferred players to somewhere that matters. Like, all these things are things that, like, I think fans have been asking for a very long time, in terms, a very long time, as in, especially the past few years, as success has waned and the league has kind of passed Sporting by. Those are hallmarks of what fans have been asking for, that know what they're talking about. And that is, I'd say what they're promising in a way. But at the same time, I think he's shown very much that there's an intentional way that he has to go about these things that came across in that press conference.
Well, and an aptitude. He has shown a history of an aptitude for doing this effectively as well. So it's not just that he can say all of these things and sort of understand them. He has the history of results doing these things, and also the understanding of the difference between where he's coming from and where he's going, and kind of how that shifts his perspective. I thought, you sort of alluded to this. I thought it was interesting to hear him say things that we thought were kind of in play regarding his interest in this job, which is that he gets to go outside of City Football Group and then to a place that doesn't have all of these resources, and then sort of build them up very specific to the club. I hope you noted this as well, because when I saw him talk about it, he called it local, because he really meant, in my opinion, he meant that he had the opportunity to build something just for this club.
Yeah.
Not for this global consortium of 13 clubs. He had the opportunity to come here and use all of that understanding and knowledge, and then build something that would be very specific to building Sporting Kansas City into something good.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of one of the first things that he talked about too. And I think that there is something to be said for, like he speaking afterwards, right? This is something that people don't see when, like, the camera gets shut off. But they went around and introduced him to a lot of local media members. But I mean, he sat and talked for a very long time with everybody, off the record, on the record, did more stuff to the side with some people. I mean, I had conversations with his son in the room there, a very kind young man, and just interested in the whole process, and interested in what's going on. And his little kid came in, the youngest son comes in and is telling dad he did so good and all this stuff. And, like, you can just see, like, his wife hung around and talked with people. I mean, there was a genuine, like, feeling of, like, okay, this is not just about what's happening over in Manchester and how we can be a cog in the wheel to be a part of that. This was very much about, as you said, the intentionality that this club matters for this city, and this is this city's club, and we're going to do something that brings pride back to this city, towards this team. and
I mean,
build it.
there's sort of a parochial nature when it comes to soccer clubs in
Hmm.
general, and someone from England probably understands that even more
Hmm.
than someone from the U.S. But even in MLS, the the soccer teams are very much of their community, right? They don't really most MLS clubs don't have a whole lot of outside their community pull outside of, like Miami is with Messi, and we've had circumstances where key players have been with teams and they've drawn outside of that, but very much it's a community type of thing, and that's always been the nature of soccer. And
Hmm.
so it's good to see someone who sort of understands that mindset and then comes with his family, like understands that he's like participating in a community around it. I want to talk about the intentionality real quick because I think that was something that I took away, specifically when they started to get into conversations about the head coaching search, because I think that is obviously a priority. He mentioned in it, and it's like his number one priority of things, something that needs to be accomplished.
Hmm.
I mean, there are a lot of priorities of things that need to happen in the next 2 to 6 weeks. So, I
Yes.
mean, all of them are happening. And I think he even admitted at some point, like, look, I've got player decisions to make. I got a head coach to make. I mean, we're going to have to make player decisions. The head coach may not be here yet, but it doesn't mean that getting a good head coach is not a significant priority. And he talked
Yeah.
at length during the press conference about
Hmm.
how important it was to get the right head coach in place and get someone who is able to execute the principles of play and whatnot that they have,
Yeah.
that he has, and that ownership has. I thought what was interesting was he started the very first, I think, question that he answered about hiring a head coach. He talked about having a very intentional and defined and clear set of criteria
Hmm.
for identifying the right head coach for this job.
Hmm.
And that is something for someone like me who's kind of like a very process oriented person, sort of,
Hmm.
I dig into analytics and details and whatnot. He seems like a person who takes a lot of information in, and he knows how to interpolate that information, or has a process by which he interpolates the information. Someone made a joke about there being a process, and that process was mentioned a lot during this press conference.
Hmm.
I I just, I got very excited to hear a guy. It's like I have a very clear idea of how we're going to go about identifying this coach, how we are going to evaluate all of these candidates and
Hmm.
evaluate them against each other with a very clear and defined and transparent sort of solution for doing that. That just seems so far outside of like anything that's happened with this club basically in its entire existence. So, like, what are your thoughts about that? Like, he seems to have a very clear idea of what he wants to do.
Yeah, and I also did like the talk of like that. I asked him about this of like the coach still needs the space to be their own genius, and however they want to set up the team. We're not going to be a 4-3-3 team. We're not going to be stuck to a formation. We're going to be a team that follows the principles of play as close as we can, and however the coach wants to accomplish that, that's great. And like I think like hearing that kind of stuff, I think is good to hear. That we're not looking for oh man, we've got to stick to that 4-3-3 with the
Yeah, and I want to be clear really quick. When I
Mhm.
say clear criteria, I'm not talking about formation. I'm not talking about
Oh,
anything.
correct.
I'm just saying he has an understanding of how he's going to evaluate candidates and
Yes.
has a process by which he's
Yeah.
going to evaluate them. It's not a whole lot. It's not this guy sounds great and agrees with everything I say, so I'm
Mhm.
going to hire him. No, like
Right.
there are clear, like from
Yeah.
what it sounds to me, like this guy has very clear sort of, I don't want to call them KPIs because that's a business word, but I mean
Yeah.
that the key performance indicators, like they're use them in business for a reason. Like he is going to evaluate these candidates on the basis of
Yeah.
very measurable
Hmm.
types of things,
Yeah.
and it formation or whatnot is not irrelevant. Just have, but also being clear with the candidates. This is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Can you meet this?
Yeah.
Right? And I think maybe that transitions the conversation about transparency because it was something that Mike Illig said up
Yeah.
front
Hmm.
was that the club is going to be much more transparent
Hmm.
about its process, and that could also be taken a little bit of a dig at the prior CSO about the level of transparency that has existed in the past.
Yeah, and I think part of it too, though, I think maybe is a little bit of self ownership of some of that in a way too. This that I think what he said in the past, that there was a mixed message of I think when they in the press conference where they fired Vermees, he mentioned that he didn't like the talk of a rebuild and all of this stuff, and okay, so there mixed messages because Mike's they put this out and they say, oh, it's going to be these three windows. Well, that means a rebuild, right? Like that's what that means, and that there's a rebuild year, and you're taking some time to slowly do a rebuild, and there have been times where Mike didn't step up to the podium and answer for hires that were made. Going back to the Gavin Wilkinson thing, and I think and he answered Sam's question about that pretty quickly there. He was asked support to expand on that, and he goes, I think the messaging, this quote verbatim was, I think the messaging hasn't met the results in the prior season. We're saying different things, meeting them, and I think we need to deliver on those things. And in our world, you can't have trust without transparency. So from us and those who weren't on the call or haven't watched it yet, he points to both him and David. I think from us sitting up here, you're going to have a lot more transparency as to what and how we're doing things. I just think there's a little bit of ownership of maybe his role in some of that lack of transparency. But
I would agree
also,
with that. I would
but
agree with
also,
that. Yeah, I don't
you know,
think it's a swipe at Vermees, but I also
no.
think that he deferred to Vermees's way of doing things a little bit. I think the what and again, this is not I'm not trying to take a dig at Mike Illig. I
No,
think
I'm not
there
trying to.
was a 15-year history of operating in a very specific way,
Hmm.
and Vermees had created a ton of success from that way, and so maybe Mike didn't. And Mike has been open about the fact that he is good friends with Peter. Like
Yeah.
they like he how difficult it was when he fired him, because it was like he was like, I'm firing my best friend. So it's like there is a certain amount of that also sort of allows you to defer to them and kind of the way they want to do things a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
And then maybe you bristle at the way a word is used because you guys haven't really talked about how you're going to communicate this,
Hmm.
right? There hasn't been a unified front to it. It's been more like a little bit freewheeling.
Yeah.
And I think, if anything, that I see from this process and this philosophy and how David Lee's going about doing things, and he talked about structure and building the organization to being strong enough to deal with turnover, which I think is another issue that this club had, obviously, with Vermees. I think you're getting everybody is sort of getting is maturing a little bit, and how this operation is run.
And I think some of that too, like you said, Vermees has been where the buck stopped on soccer in this organization period for well over a decade. And so, when you now move away from that and you realize all that you don't know and all that you don't have set up, because maybe you were trusting someone to do all of that for a while, and the analytics side, the backroom staff side, and all of those things that we look back at where Sporting was even maybe 2 years ago, where they are now with some of that stuff, and how thin they were in reality to compared to a lot of the league, and some of those things you learn through this process, maybe what you don't have and what you need. And I think that's some of what I wouldn't have I didn't take his comments to as more of like a, oh, we're going to be a much more hands-on ownership in the way, and in any way, shape, or
Yeah, I
form,
didn't take it that way either.
but
No,
in a more upfront and actively.
maybe more collaborative might be a better way of describing
Correct.
it.
And I think so, because for a long time, like you said, there's been trust that Peter was going to do it because there was success, and he was the one that from day one kind of led the ownership group to soccer and through soccer, and through MLS as it has changed.
I think it's just more the feedback loop is going to be more structured.
Yeah.
And I mean, but that's the expectation. I think, it took him a couple versions of the question to get there, but Mike said, it's like, look, we believe this is the best candidate in the league. That's why we hired him. That's why we gave him a 7-year deal.
Yeah.
But that also means that there's going to be expectations of performance, and there's going to be a continuous feedback loop between them, and sort of a collaboration, to your point before. So I don't think that him. I think the problem is we are so unused to ownership being involved in this at all. Everything has been Peter Vermees and Peter Vermees only for pretty much every fan's existence of being a fan of this team.
Yeah.
I mean, at least back till 2008, right? So I think that there's a whole lot of adjustment that all of us are making at this point as far as like how this structure is going to look. But again, going back to what Lee said about building an architecture that is capable of dealing with turnover and coaches going in and out and players going in and out and staff going in and out, that is what a professional football organization looks like.
Yeah.
And ownership being involved and collaborating with your president of soccer operations is a completely normal kind of thing that we see professional soccer or football operations go through. And it's just something that has been so opaque to most Sporting Kansas City fans for such a long time. It's the transparency, to use their word, is new.
Yep. Correct.
So let's go to a couple questions I had.
Yeah.
First of all, we didn't hear them talk much about existing staff, right? There's a whole lot of talk about like building out an analytics department or building out scouting and recruiting departments, and sort of we people who listen to this podcast regularly know how often we've talked about how few individuals there are in those positions. And I think David Lee understands that and understands the work ahead of him to do that. But there are some people on staff. Some of them were hired recently. Some, have been. We didn't hear much talk about where that fits in. So have you heard anything kind of like where Mike Burns fits into this? Like, has obviously, David Lee's last day with New York City was on Friday. His first day was yesterday here.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not going to speak about personnel in detail, but have you heard anything kind of like the architecture and how he feels, where he feels Mike fits into all of this, Mike Burns specifically?
Yeah, I don't know quite yet on exactly where Burns is going to fit into this. I know he'll still have a role. He is, I believe, I was told he signed some sort of contract extension with the team. So I think should plan to have Burns around the staff, and I think he's done enough work, good work, really, to be honest, in how he handled some of these things that this club has had to face roster-wise. What they were able to do in offloading some of these seemingly cement blocks on the roster last off season. There's enough that I think warrants keeping him around in the organization in some way, shape, or form. I think after that, it's still really bare staff wise. After that, I mean, we're maybe talking about Jacob Peterson being the only like technical staff person that we know of behind the scenes anymore too. Like as a staff or as a scout, like. I mean,
they've got a contract scout in Europe, but I mean, it's not like a full-time employee.
And so we're talking like that's already really thin and bare bones. So I expect a lot of those to, eventually fill out just as the department fills out. I think, Jacob Peterson's done a fair amount of good work in identifying some kids that out of college that were useful for SKC2 as well as
which was meant to be his job originally, right? Like Jacob was meant to be a domestic scout that was looking at college, USL, that kind of thing, right? And
and I think
there was a whole story about the $50K in GAM they got for because of what was the guy's name that signed from a USL team? Anyway, that they had scouted pre-Polito's exit, right?
The striker from Minnesota, yes,
right, yeah. So I think that like. Jacob should be able to go do what he was hired to do. Yeah. And Roger Espinosa should be able to go do what he was hired to do instead of like being an on the bench assistant coach for every game, which was not what he was hired to do at all.
No.
And so they need to fill out all of these positions. I agree with you completely.
And I think that's maybe the benefit for Lee. Like you look at the roster. I know he talked about this specifically in looking at the actual roster of the team, that there's so many, this team has a lot of fluidity because there's not a lot of hard contracts that you can't move off of players with to create room to bring in new players. The same thing with the staff. You're not like there's so little backroom staff. Really, the only thing that's up in the air is the coaching staff at this point, and that would be dependent upon who is hired as the head coach, who else and how that head coach wants to fill out their staff as well. David Lee's probably not picking the entirety of the backroom staff for the head coach or the assistant coach's room, right? So whoever, like those types of positions that are still there are going to be the ones that might have question marks until the head coach is hired. But for the most part, Lee's got a blank slate to build the backroom and technical staff as he sees fit, outside of some of the two that are there and Mike Burns still being on. So I think there's going to be a lot of of course Rumba, not yes Rumba, right? Am I messing up who is Academy director at the moment? But
Oh, yeah. I knew you were going to ask me
uh,
this, and I knew who you were
Declan,
talking about.
Declan Jones.
Declan Yogi.
You
Anyway,
almost said Declan Rice there.
I almost
Yeah,
did. I almost did. Declan Yogi.
yes, that's
So,
Rumba. He's in that.
so
Anyways, yeah.
one of the things in I when I watch something like this, I'm always sort of reading between the lines of sort of the commentary, and especially when they start getting off the cuff. So this whole conversation about the amount of flexibility they have. Someone asked a question regarding playing towards the 2026 World Cup, and Mike Illig went fairly long discussing how this was the plan to have all of this roster flexibility in 2026, which seems a little. It was a little really, but also eyebrow raising because he's on the competition committee. So when he starts talking about things about roster rules, like he made a little comment in there about maybe rule changes might be coming and all that. Like he's on the comp committee, so when he starts saying things like that, it makes me start thinking, okay, is MLS really considering some changes here? Does this give Sporting even more flexibility going into 2026 about how they build their roster? So I don't know if you read that much into that, but I just thought it was noteworthy that he phrased it. And like I said, I mean I've seen Mike Illig talk enough to know some of this stuff is posturing. Like I get that, but also I don't think he'd throw stuff in there about potential rule changes just off the cuff like that for no reason.
No, in agreement with that, and I think even Lee's it's one of the questions that was made to Lee, I think right before that, from Todd Lebo, was about like you've been in MLS for a long time. What do you like about it? Would you make anything different, kind of a thing? And man, like to me, I read hints of him like in responses underlying in there of like saying we've got to get the calendar flipped in a way because they're talking
Right.
about being able to compete in the transfer market for better players, and some of it is financial, but at the same time, like how much of the conversation around the international windows are also about being able to align yourself to get the best players that are available at free agency or that are able to actually move on from clubs before the season starts. I mean, those are all moving parts of the picture here. I think,
The,
in
the
all,
the soccer business aspect of the calendar change, I'm 100% on board with.
yeah,
The United States as a geography, being able to figure this out weather wise
yeah,
is a different conversation.
right,
But the business of doing soccer globally, it 100% makes sense to flip the calendar. But I also thought it was interesting that Lee was also he said like I'd like to see the league start to be a little bit more aggressive about how they do things so that they can bring in a higher quality player. And it was both that and I think expenditures, and like Mike is doing this the
yep,
whole time. Like
yep,
he's on board, and I think that shows that just gives it's nonverbal communication, but it gives you some sort of understanding. I will also say that I have enough understanding of who the holdouts are on the calendar change, and I don't believe they exist in Kansas City. Let me just put it that way.
I agree with that one.
Okay, so I think that that is from what I understand a foregone conclusion that it's going to happen at some point. The question is when,
Yeah,
and what dispensation needs to happen to bring the last few holdouts on board so that they can get the vote passed by the board of governors. But yeah, it does sort of hint at like what the league's thinking about long term and whether having all of this roster flexibility right now might be an advantage.
and you know, I think on top of that, you have the comments I thought were good from Lee about like being able to generate. I mean, he specifically talking about how transfers generate more GAM for the club, and the GAM you can use back.
Right into my veins, dude. Right into
Right,
my
like
veins.
all the
He
MLS
started talking about generating GAM, and I was like, yes,
all
this
of
is my
the
guy.
all of the MLS sickos in the room, collectively nodding their heads over discussing this. But I think like you hear some of that, and you hear just like there's an aptitude from and even in Mike's confirmation, nonverbal and some verbal too, in the discussion of spend, like this is right. This whole situation is ripe for a really good turnover and building it back into something, the club back into being a club that's at the forefront of the league and how they're doing things. And I think that wasn't, that phrase wasn't said, but for a long time, this club has been a model. And in Mike's discussion and some of the opening comments of helping get this club back up to the stature that it's had within the league and even within its own fan base and stuff, like that is part of the equation, is being at the forefront of some of those things. And so it'll be really interesting to see how they operate. I say thankfully, but just for the sake of like not sitting here, we're not sitting here in July thinking, okay, gosh, we have like 5 months before we know what's going to happen with roster stuff. No, we're probably going to know this within the next month to 2 months at worst, and you're going to have tangible vision of how this club is going to start operating going forward very quickly. And so I'm excited to see it play out because there's a room here to do a lot.
Yeah, and he understands that he's got to make some decisions very quickly. Like I think obviously the head coaching search is important, but he also emphasized how it was important to get it accomplished as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Which, I was like, well, we just hired this guy. Like now he's got to put his process in and evaluate candidates. And it sounds to me like maybe I think he's been through this enough. Like I think that was something that was highlighted during the press conference.
Mm-hmm.
He has hired several coaches already. He's been through this a few times and probably has already developed a process by which he evaluates them.
And
And
also, like he just did this last off season. Like
right.
he
And hired a really good coach.
and he might have
Like,
a candidate pool that's
yeah,
still already
for
stuck in
sure.
his head.
For sure.
That's gonna.
Well, but also like he highlighted the fact that being at NYCFC, he knows that coaches are going to rotate through because it's City Football Group, and there's going to be folks from within the organization as well
Mhm.
as out of it that have aspirations to do the next thing. It's like, how do we maintain a process? Like he's very specifically talked about this. Is like, we might hire a guy, he might do a great job, and then have aspirations elsewhere, and we've got to be able to absorb that. Which also means that he's already thinking in that way all the time. Which means as soon as he hired Pascal Jansen, he's already thinking, what are the next several candidates that I would have based on their timing and whatnot. And basically what I'm saying is Big Ange to SKC confirmed. That's what I'm saying.
Either that or Dom Torrent would be.
Yeah. Oh God, no, I don't know about that. I think so. You're joking, but also the thing that I got a feeling from in all of this, and Tom Bogert talked about this a little bit as well. I think he's excited to be outside of the City Football Group umbrella.
Oh yeah. I think you could get that, and I know he was very complimentary of them today, and he's not going to necessarily throw them under the bus,
Of
but
course, he's worked there for 12 years and been
right,
extremely successful while he's been there. Like, why would he? But you
yeah,
can still tell that he's like, I'm glad to be out of this, the boundaries of this.
right, and I need to get I need to get something done. Okay, what's the process? Imagine trying to get that done at City Football Group. He answers to the owners. That's it. He makes one phone call, and that's his getting it up the ladder to make a decision. And I wonder, I don't know how many times we'd see this too with NYCFC. The signings late in the transfer window and all that kind of stuff. How much of that is City Football Group? How much of that was David Lee, biding his time for the perfect guy in something? But like I tend to lean on that being City Football Group.
Yeah.
A problem with that. And so, like you look at all of that, like how much more quickly and efficiently does he operate in this, and is able to do so without having to do so within a structure of something that's not his. He operated very well.
Or fight through the politics of
Yes.
what the consortium wants versus what
Correct.
he wants to do with the team, right?
Right.
I think that's the key part of it. And I think so you mentioned, having, he makes one call to owners and like this is what we do at Sporting Kansas City. I think for fans of this club, there's going to be a raised eyebrow about that because it's like, oh, he has to call and ask for permission. Historically, we haven't seen him get permission, or at least we have the feeling that Peter Vermees wasn't getting permission. I want to try to quell those concerns a little bit, mainly because I think that problem was as much on Vermees as it was on owners. I
Hmm.
think Vermees was so unfamiliar with asking for things
Hmm.
that he didn't necessarily, until things got really bad, he didn't make it clear that these were investments that I need. And I don't know that he was as good. And this is not a dog on Vermees. I want to be really clear about this. I don't think he was as good at articulating the structure that was necessary for success
Hmm.
and selling it to owners as like this is what I need and this is why, as David Lee is going to be. This is a guy who they invested in him. They went out and recruited him. They gave him a 7-year contract, which I'm sure is at a significant pay raise, and that pay raise is going to look like a lot more money in Kansas City than it does in New York. I think that but there's also like a basis of competency that he comes from as far as building an organization, understanding an organization, and his ability to communicate that effectively in a genuine way that doesn't feel like a sales pitch, I think will also allow this organization to operate, and this is something I said last week, operate on the soccer side as well as it does on the business side. And on the business side, I know enough of these people and I kind of that I know that, there is a lot of healthy conflict that happens there regarding like how certain things should be done, and they go back and forth. And I believe that Vermees had healthy conflict in his group,
Hmm.
but I don't know that it really existed when he was trying to conceptualize what the org should look like.
Hmm.
And I get the feeling that more than anything, what's happening here is this team is taking about 14 steps forward to modernizing how the soccer operation runs.
Yep.
It just feels like a guy that understands all of that, and I think that that's a really positive thing.
Yeah. It is.
So, what are your last thoughts? Any final thoughts? Anything we didn't get to that you noticed during this conversation that was like kind of noteworthy to you?
Um, I'll probably touch on that in a story that's coming up too. But the note of like how quickly he feels it is possible for the team to turn things around in MLS, versus how many times we heard about three windows and all this kind of stuff. Which, truly, if we go back to what Mike said, if the plan all along was to have as much flexibility going into this window, then yes, you are talking about three windows in Vermees's aspect of you have this window to do this, this window to do this, and then this window to do this is going to be a big window here. Three windows to do this, but you've got a guy that's coming here and saying, well, in reality, in that plan, he's got one window in part of that plan and how it was originally conceptualized for that, discretionary budget and all that stuff. But at the same time, you're looking at a guy that clearly, I mean, he threw out numbers, very good numbers. As it said, the last 4 years, at least 7 out of the 18 teams in the playoffs were new every single year. This year it's five, it could be seven. It's nearly 50% of the playoff pool that wasn't in the playoffs before the year before. He goes, and there are 6 or 7 teams every year that increase their points total by 12 or more, which is four more wins. He goes, that happens regularly. We need to be one of those teams that makes that happen. If you look back at the last three MLS Cup winners, they were not in the playoffs the direct year before they won MLS Cup. That shows now going wooden spoon contender to MLS Cup champion. Very hard, right? We're talking about an LAFC or a Seattle or somebody like that that was kind of LAFC has a down year, Columbus has a down year, and all of a sudden hires Wilfred Nancy and
I mean,
and
Columbus might miss the playoffs this year, to be completely
Columbus.
honest.
They
But
might,
yeah,
but like you're looking at some of those things and how those happen. Okay, that makes sense. They were kind of on the borderline when they missed, but the idea that this team can't turn itself around to be a competitive team from very quickly, I think is kind of a crazy concept, given the way that this league and he feels that way. And I think that that really stuck out to me in discussing the fact that the window is now to rebuild and retool this team and make this team competitive next year. And bar none, the roster has to get better. And as much as getting the coach in is like a first priority, like the priority in the long run is improving the first team roster as quickly and as best as possible.
yeah. The hard part for me watching this was like I was just like, yep, 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 yep. I agree with what you just said. Yes, yes, yes. We're using information to inform our decisions. We have a construct by which we come about making decisions that is very well defined. I'm just like, yes, 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 sir. Can I help you here? To your, I really was like, I'm trying not to like get out over my skis and just get too enamored with the hiring because it all of it sounds so good. And
Mhm.
realistically, this team has been told a lot of positive things over the last 3 years with very limited actual results coming from them. So the proof will still be in the pudding.
Mhm.
But I do believe that like I have a I like to feel like I have a fairly decent read on people, and I don't feel like David Lee is full of shit. I really
Yeah.
don't. I think this is like what he really believes, and I also believe that he has the expertise necessary to
Mhm.
actually accomplish what he believes. And as we said on the podcast last week when we talked about the candidate pool, I'm not sure any other candidate they had, at least in the finalist list, has this level of expertise within MLS to
Mhm.
actually be able to pull off what he says he's going to do.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you have a guy, like, let's say some of the rumors, right, of um, uh, from Brentford potentially in the mix as a finalist and all that kind of stuff. Like those, okay, that's a guy that's never set foot outside of the English football system. And the
Like,
way,
I believe he's a smart football guy that understands how
brilliant,
to identify players and can utilize all of those to, like,
100% true. But,
sort
you
of work within MLS, but it doesn't
know,
mean he knows MLS.
right. And the way that and knows it in a way that like is going to create a like lasting structural thing. And I do think it's interesting too. Like a lot of these things that he's hired in to do will fall outside of the first team roster management and general manager role are all of these very like academy stuff and pro player pathway and all these things are very like long term things where you don't need like immediate crazy change to get right. You can take a little bit of time. These things, the coach,
There's something to be said with the academy. There's nothing he needs to do. Like,
yeah,
with since Declan Yogi's taken over, we're finally starting to see some growth there, and
yep,
probably once he evaluates, might be like, maybe I leave that alone for a minute,
yeah,
and because the academy you don't see results from for 3 to 5 years when you make
no,
significant changes, right?
correct. And you won't. And I think like when you look back at how he's going to do this and how all these things are here, sure, he's got to have a lot of these things, but bar none, he's going to be judged on how that first team plays. Is he putting butts back in the seats? Is he are fans like excited, jazzed to come to SKC games again? Are is this team winning? Because those two, all those go hand in hand too, right? Last year maybe this team was able to survive not winning for a little while because they had certain players that fans were really attached to, and they had the Open Cup run, still intrigue. But ultimately, like that was a losing team. This team very quickly has been a losing team all year, and you've seen it slowly continue to hinder, attendance and numbers and fans and stuff like that. That he will be judged on whether or not that this team starts winning and how all that kind of stuff comes back in, because that's not just business stuff. That's putting butts in seats for the fans. And so I'll ultimately he will be judged on those. And I like the fact that he is very quickly prioritizing that, and not so much of like, we've got to make this better, and we have these medium term goals and fleshing out these large structures and stuff, but ultimately processes matter for coach and players, and we've got to get those right off the bat.
Yeah, he understands what the most important things are that have to be addressed right now.
Yep.
And we'll get into the Eisenhower matrix later, like with we get into the urgent but not important, or the important but not urgent stuff later, right? I think that I appreciated just sort of the very sort of thoughtful and methodical and sort of defined approach that he has, and I think that is going to bear well here. But he also understands what the immediate need is.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he made comments. It's like, we're going to make player decisions in 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, he knows that this team's out of the playoffs, and a week from Saturday starts having exit interviews.
Yeah.
So, like, he gets that, and he understands that while he's been evaluating from afar, they're going to have to make player decisions very quickly. And he wasn't afraid to just say that. Like, that's the thing that's the transparency that I'm talking about. He just said it. He's like, look, we're going to make these decisions 2 to 3 weeks. And then, I'm not going to wait to hire a coach to decide about these things.
Yeah.
And we're going to work from there. Mm-hmm. And I think that just that was the refreshing sort of approach to how to communicate with the press and with the fans about what's going on, that I think is going to be welcomed by a lot of us. And hopefully we get to see it continue. And I appreciate you, Mr. Sperry, for jumping on with me after just an hour after having a long time with him. And we will be back here in a second where Cody and I get to break this down even further. And we will talk to y'all then. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this special multi-part episode of the Home and Away podcast. I am joined once again, as always, by my good friend Cody Weldon.
Not always.
Well, I mean, most of the time.
I was replaced earlier today.
You were. He had a lot of things to do. He's fresh off his 14th listen to the new Taylor Swift album. Cody, have you heard enough about Travis Kelce's Redwood Tree?
I mean, I can hear more, honestly. I mean, I feel great for the guy, good for him.
Listen, not all of us get, 100 million plus people, learning about our abilities as a stick man. I don't know what to say other than that. Like, congratulations, Travis.
I'm cheering for that guy. Like, honestly, like, man, you do you, Mr. Swift. Make it happen.
Well done. All right. Well, in the news this morning, Kansas City, as Daniel Sperry and I discussed in part 1 of this episode, a lot to unpack from the conversation with David Lee at the press conference today. Obviously, Mike Gillig as well. Both participated in about a 40-minute press conference, which was fairly well attended, as well as pretty well. I would say the questions were good, but also just the responses from Lee were fairly enlightening. So I've said a lot about this already. I know you've heard a little bit of mine in Daniel's conversation. I'm going to let you roll a little bit and just tell me what your thoughts are based on what you've heard so far about this hiring and kind of what you see the next steps being for the club.
I mean, I think that the whole thing, from the outset, from the announcement that this is who that they were hiring, it just reeks of like competence and pragmatism, and it makes too much sense. I can't get honestly, and I'm a petty enough person that it really gives me an axe to grind about the way that shit's been handled in the last couple of years. But I'm really trying hard not to be that guy, and just to be optimistic looking forward. But I think that the all the right things are being said. All the right things are being, written in the profiles of Lee, and so I think I'm really excited. I didn't get to hear the press conference today, but I was paying attention enough to the Discord and then also listened to what I could of you and Sperry, and so I do have some idea of what was said. But I also read the article from on MLSsoccer.com. But I just have to say that it just makes me laugh every time about.
It's the dumbest name of a website.
No, it's great. It's so
soccer.com.
It's perfect. It's so the MLS. It's just
the
perfect.
MLS. Yeah, it should be the MLS.com.
It really
That's
should.
That's what it should be.
It really should.
Because they couldn't. I mean, they couldn't use MLS.com because that is the real estate website. So it should be the MLS.com. That is the way you fix that.
That would be perfect. But this is even better. Like I'm telling you, I don't ever change. I love it. Anyway, so that write up that Charlie Boehm did on him was really great. Listening to smart people like Joe Lowry and that crew talk about what possibly lies ahead for Sporting Kansas City and maybe their thoughts on what the fan base should feel. I think all of those have been sort of clarifying inputs for me, and I think that I just like really the mix between competence and ambition, I really like it. And because it's not just like, it's not just like they're hiring somebody who's been there, done that. That's competence, right? Like we know that, but I think that the everything that I'm hearing from Lee and about Lee speaks to like there's a significant amount of ambition, both coming from him, but also from ownership when it comes to hiring this specific person at this specific time. And I that's exciting, man. It's exciting. It really is. And to go, just. I mean, you can do this about so many different things, but like just thinking about the shift in the input that analytics is going to have in this club, like just that alone is worth it, right? But when you factor in all of the other stuff, also, it's like, oh, like this might become like a modern club, right? Like we might be able to see our club really sort of grow into something we can be proud of in a very short time frame, and I'm looking forward to that because it's been pretty shitty for a pretty long time, all things considered. So I'm really happy. I'm really optimistic, honestly.
It feels like a pretty drastic shift, no?
Yeah, it's like a completely
fairly significant, and which makes you question. I mean, and I just have to like be realistic about this. It makes you question why has it had to get to this point for this to happen?
Yeah, and it's not just giving Vermees the keys to everything, but it's also giving Vermees all the keys, and he's the only one that had all the keys to all the stuff, and realizing
and
now
feeling a little bit like everyone was subservient to him and how he wanted to do it.
I mean, it kind of feels a little bit like that, but it feels also like, I mean, it really feels to me like ownership was like, oh, we got one guy to do like, five, the job of like five people for the price of 1.5 people.
Okay, but
so
this
great.
is where I'm going to push back a little bit because I understand where that mindset comes from. But if this ownership group is willing to hire this guy and empower him to build an analytics department, a scouting department, and all this other things, it doesn't necessarily seem like it's a financial problem.
No,
right now.
I'm not saying that it was, Drew. I'm saying that the incentive was against them making changes because Vermees was doing such a good job. So they were like, oh, we can,
sure.
we can be cheap on this because we have the right guy, I think is what their thinking was.
I think it was more that there was like they didn't want to mess with it because it seemed to be working and they had someone who seemed to know enough. And in complete like fairness to the ownership group, and Mike Illick has said this publicly when Peter Vermees left, it's like we need, when they were asking about the search groups and whatnot to find a new CSO, it's like we need people to help advise us on how to do this effectively. I'm not smart enough about soccer. It's like I enjoy soccer, but I'm not smart enough about soccer to make this decision completely on my own. And with Vermees, they had someone who is extremely confident in his perspective. Right. Mm-hmm. Like, and almost overconfident in his perspective and his belief in what he was doing. that was able to, create that confidence in ownership and allow and I think, he became his own worst enemy at a certain
Yeah.
point. Vermees did, because he was willing to do everything. He wanted the control over everything, and then it just sort of it was a sort of self-fulfilling thing that turned into what it is now. And I think it's a weird thing. I'm going to be honest. It's a weird thing to see him out in, going to sports soccer conferences in Michigan and talking about, well, you need to invest in this, and you need to invest in that, and you need to invest in this. I find it hard to believe that David Lee could convince them to invest in a bunch of things and Vermees couldn't. Right? Like, that's
Yeah.
the part that I'm struggling to square. Maybe he knew that he needed it, but didn't, for whatever reason, because of the relationship, didn't think that it would happen if he did it. I don't know. I talked about this with Sperry a little bit. It seems like Lee is a much more effective at communicating what his needs are, and asking for them than perhaps Vermees was. I don't know. I'm just sort of throwing thoughts around about this, but I will say that. Let me put it this way: I don't think Vermees is particularly at fault for specifically at fault for what happened. I don't think ownership is specifically at fault for what happened. I think the combination of the two and the relationship of the two is what allowed things to get as bad as they were.
Yeah.
And the separation has allowed everybody to get some space,
Uh-huh.
and go, okay, this is how we go forward.
Yeah, I think in a lot of respects, Vermees was his own worst enemy. I think that he was a victim of his own successes, right? It was difficult for him to ask for more money when he was making it to the precipice of MLS Cup, with the roster and the salary that he had. For
Well,
instance,
he's made that whole comment like years later. Oh, I had a striker ready to sign up, but I was told no. And I've heard that that's a very one-sided version of that story.
Sure.
So, like, that's what I'm saying is, like, I think some of these things are, like, to your point, being his own worst enemy. Maybe like I said, I think it's more that you made the comment at the beginning that it feels like the club is modernizing, becoming more professional in nature. And that is not to say that Peter Vermees is not a professional. That is not what I mean to say here. What I'm saying is that Peter Vermees and his way of running an organization is old,
right,
and not modern, right?
Right.
And you need that modern sort of structure in place. David Lee mentioned it multiple times during his press conference about having the ability to function in a modern MLS and being able to sustain success as people move in and out.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure Vermees ever built the system that way. It was all about him and what he did, and it wasn't really about the structure of the organization.
But I don't know that he thought that. I think that he probably saw those two things as one and the same to some degree. I think that I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what I don't like to just like put words in his mouth or thoughts in his brain. But it seems like he was a little bit high on his own supply, and
at the end he definitely was. The last couple years he was. Yeah.
He thought that he had outsmarted and figured out how to zag when other clubs were zigging, and had done that enough times that he thought he could do it perpetually. And once other administrators started leaving the club, and that allowed maybe a little bit of a power consolidation. I think that not replacing the front office talent, I think might have been.
But Cody, that started in 2018.
I know. No, well, this decline started in 2018. Like, when you think about it, like that's the last time when like all of when the team was actually good, right? Because and this speaks to the sort of high on your own supply thing. Like you live off of those early 2010 draft classes, where you had Beasler and Espinosa and Zusi. You built a dynasty on those players, and then the draft went fallow for years and years and years.
Well, they even quit participating in it for several years.
And it's like, no, like like in retrospect, it's really easy to say that, but all you got to do, it doesn't, and it didn't have to be retrospective, because all one had to do was look around the league and keep an eye on what other competitive, ambitious clubs around the league were doing, and realize that you can't just put all your eggs in one or two baskets. And I think that that's what ended up happening, and never replacing adequately that talent was, I think, ultimately, a big step towards Peter Vermes' undoing. Like, just like, frankly, not replacing just the ball winning capabilities of Roger Espinosa alone. That single thing um, um, probably kept him from fulfilling his contract. I actually believe
Yeah.
that, right? Like,
This is the thing that I get into with this when it comes to roster building, roster construction, and game modeling, and principles of play, and all that kind of stuff. I think, and I didn't mean this to turn into a conversation of like how Peter Vermes lost it over the last 4 years. I really don't. I didn't
but
mean it to be
it's
that.
hard not to think about that when you listen to these folks talk in a presser about
Right.
all
I
the
mean, David
changes that
Lee,
are coming.
and I know you haven't heard it yet. And I want you to go like listen to the whole thing, because this guy sounds like super sharp, like
Sure.
wired tight, like he knows what the fuck he's talking about, and not in a way that I think I mentioned this earlier. Mike Kuhn and I were talking on the Discord about this. It doesn't sound like the Vermees way of just like sort of selling you a bill of goods and
Right.
like sounding like he's like working an angle.
Right.
No, this is like a guy being very transparent. He's like, look, I know we've got some work to do. I know this roster needs a lot of work. We've got, someone asked him about what his number one priority was, and he's like, well, my first priority is hiring a head coach and
Yeah.
going through the process for doing that. And
That's great.
yeah,
I,
it
I mean,
should be.
I love hearing that, because
Yeah.
that's where it needs to start.
Yeah, and he discussed in more detail. Like he was very clear about how he had a very clear process and mindset by which he wants to identify and evaluate head coach candidates, and it will be very specific and very sort of metric driven, and like very clear to the candidates as well what he's looking for and whether or not they meet that standard. Right, like it's exactly what you would expect for that type of process, which is great. But when you hear all of that, right, and you hear someone being so transparent and candid, it's different from what we have become used to hearing in these press conferences, which is more of a sales pitch or more of an angle being, said, and more of like a positioning, right? You're positioning something in a certain way to get people on your side, versus Lee just saying like, "This is what I'm gonna do."
Yeah.
And I that's just refreshing, man. And I think that that's a sort of that's a modernization as well, just a modern communication style.
Yep.
And for Mike Illick to even say himself, there's going to be more of a transparency in the way we're doing things on the soccer side of the business. I mean, I don't think it was meant as a dig. I really don't, but it is been an issue with this club for the entirety of Peter Vermes' time in charge. The opacity and just sort of the inability to really say anything of significance.
Yeah.
There was more said in this press conference of detail and significance than anything I've heard in the last 10 years come out of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's telling, right? And so it shows me, like I said, it shows me that maybe it wasn't necessarily a lack of willingness to do this on the ownership side of things, but perhaps there's a lack of interest in doing it on the CSO side of things.
Sure.
Just a philosophy change, right? And I think that philosophy, wrong or right, like Bruce Arena got an extra 20 plus points out of San Jose this year. So it's not like you can't be sort of a curmudgeon from New Jersey and make things work, right? Like you can. But you can also, like, there are more modern and more sort of forward-thinking ways of doing things. And for you to be successful, I think, in Kansas City, and I think that David Lee understands that, to be successful in this city that has a very clear sort of history of expecting success from its soccer team, you have to be thoughtful, and you have to be using and he even mentioned this, you have to use every mechanism. So going back to the draft and going back to other recruiting practices and whatnot, He was very clear about that, and having an analytics model by which you can identify those players and bring them in. I really do think that like it was hard for me watching him to not get like super like over optimistic
Yeah.
about the situation, because of all the things that we've complained about for the last 4 years, this guy was answering all of that. It was very
Yep.
much of the mindset of you and I, right? Like of how we think a soccer team should be run. He is on that wavelength. And so it's going to be difficult for me to not be too gushy about this, because
I'm here for you, Drew.
you're
I
here
will
for
help.
me. You're here for me. You will bring the
The
pessimism,
saltiness.
the
Someone's got to do it.
saltiness.
It's a hard job, but I think I'm up to the task.
You will piss in my cornflakes when necessary.
I
I
will.
can always count on you to do that.
This is true. It's my one elite skill.
One of the things Lee discussed during the presser that Daniel and I didn't get into too much was, we did a little bit, was his interest in the job having to do with his ability to get outside of the CFG umbrella. And it was something that we talked about last week and sort of assumed might be an interest. So to him to say it publicly was noteworthy, I think. He even said kind of almost exactly what I suggested last week, which is, I've seen how all this works. I've seen how a global football consortium does this. Now I get to go and bring it local, and I get to build it myself specifically for this club, which I thought was fantastic. But also, like, his level of excitement when he said that, like, you could tell how fired up he was to be able to do this. But it also sort of alludes to some things that I had heard from Tom Bogert about kind of his time at New York City, kind of just maybe some of the struggles that he had while he was there. There was commentary about like just this year when they signed Nico Fernandez, who's 25 years old. Oh my God, 25.
Yeah.
Like, apparently it was a massive battle within the organization, because it wasn't part of the City Football Group recruiting strategy for him
Right.
to get approval to sign a 25-year-old on an $8 million transfer, right? Like,
It sounds delightful.
like so. Similarly, apparently, when he hired Pascal Jansen,
Yeah.
they wanted him to bring someone from the City Football Group. Like, there have been circumstances where he has had to go fight the politics within that organization to make decisions that he knew were right. And you can tell based on the press conference that he's excited about not having those types of shackles and going, I found this elite fucking player or this elite candidate, and going to ownership and having the support of them going, we love that, let's go.
Yeah.
Right?
It's
Like,
exciting.
that was the feeling I got from the press conference.
Yeah. What professional wouldn't like that, right? Like, just to have the handcuffs off and to be trusted, and obviously he's going to be held accountable. And they did talk about accountability, measures also. But I mean, that is, I'm sure from his aspect that. That's like a dream job, right? Like, he gets an increase in pay, a decrease in cost of living, an increase in his title, but also he gets to really be able to put his own stamp on the club. And I think that again, like, it speaks to his ambition, and it also speaks to the club's ambition to hire somebody who is seriously talking about doing that sort of thing. So. How exciting.
This is the third or fourth time at this point during the presser where we heard that Mike Illig was the one that reached out to him.
Yeah.
This wasn't a I applied for this job situation.
Yeah.
It was he reached out to him. And David Lee said in his statement, I wasn't looking to go anywhere.
Yeah.
They reached out to me and then came back to me with the plan and the idea. And the more I talked to him about it and the more I got interested in it. And you know what I mean? Like, I like that from our ownership group. I like them being aggressive.
It does make one, reconsider or at least temper some of the maybe ill will against the Illigs for the way that things have been handled in the past couple of years. But Yeah, absolutely.
It certainly just gives you a different perspective of kind of how they're looking at this.
Hmm.
And I think look, all sides have learned a lot over the last couple of years
Yeah.
about how to do this better, right? And the best thing you can expect is that you take those learnings and you go and you get better from them, and
Yeah.
you use those learnings to improve. And that is the feeling that I'm getting from this situation for sure. And it's the whole ownership group, right? I mean, Mike is obviously sitting up there as the principal owner of the club and representing the ownership group, but they're all involved in this decision, and I think they all have different levels of influence on it, and are helping sort of drive this forward, which is nice to see for sure. I probably, I mean, I know this is PR speak and whatnot, but David Lee coming in here and like basically in his first sentence saying this is the best job in the league.
Mm. Yeah.
And the other thing was, and look, we hear about this a lot, and Vermees has said this a lot. This is another thing that Daniel and I didn't really get a chance to talk about, but Vermees has always said, like, if I can get somebody to Kansas City, they'll stay here, right? Like, if I can get them here, they'll stay here. And Lee talked about, like, someone asked a question about recruiting players. And he's like, look, I don't know. I've never tried to recruit players to Kansas City. I know what it was like in New York City, and obviously that's a different metropolitan area and city football group. And he like, outwardly admitted to the fact that there are differences in these two situations. But then he also said, he's like, look, I've just been here for 2 days, and I'm telling you right now, if I was a football player, I don't know why I wouldn't play here. Like, this is amazing. Like, and he's seen what New York City has. He's seen the city football group stuff. He's like, there are no places like this in MLS. And I agree. I'm sort of numb to it because I see it all the time and I'm aware of it. But Compass Minerals National Training Center and Children's Mercy Park are pretty fucking nice.
Yeah.
At like a Premier level, a
Yeah.
Premier League level. Like,
Yep.
Crystal Palace probably doesn't have facilities like this, right? Like, there
No,
are
look at where they play. No, they don't.
no. And so that's what I'm saying is like
The current
there
does
are,
though.
huh?
The current does though.
The current does. The current does have really nice facilities
They
as
do.
well, but that's what I'm saying is like, Kansas City is a pretty nice place to play soccer. It really is. And I think that maybe getting some outside perspective on that and bringing that in will also help some of the recruiting aspects of it when, this guy is much more familiar with talking to $8 to $10 million transfer fee prospects
Yeah.
and what it takes to get him to City Football Group. Now he's can do it in Kansas City and have the facilities and the sales pitch and whatnot and have the eyes open of like, look where you get to play soccer, man.
Yeah.
Also, by the way, it only costs like $200,000 for a house.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, maybe soccer player house, $500,000 for a house, whatever, right? But like, you know what I mean? Like, it's there. This is a nice place to live and be, and also you have all of these really nice facilities, and like life can be very good for you here. And I think that is probably. It's just nice to see someone externally come in and go, wow, like this, I can build something here.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to bring in those external eyes also, and I think that's one of the problems that the club suffered from in the last, especially 5 years or so, is that it was all very siloed, right? It was there was not an influx of ideas either coming in or going out, and that is the definition of stagnation. And I think that things aren't stagnant, hopefully, any longer. They can't be. There's lots of changes on the horizon.
I mean, Lee
That's
said
exciting.
I've got 2 to 3 weeks to make player decisions.
That's crazy. That's just nuts. That's a lot.
But I mean, it's true. But he's
Yeah,
right about this.
right.
Like the season ends next Saturday.
Yep.
So like we got a week from Saturday, the season's over.
Yep.
So he's right. Like he has just maybe a week or two after that, and he's got to make I mean, they have till like November or something, right? Whatever to make their actual official decisions. But I mean, if you got guys on options or whatever, you need to have made those decisions well before that. You can't leave them hanging out there waiting
Right.
and hoping, right? Like you have to make those decisions ahead of time. But he understands that, and he's like, I'm going to get in here really quickly, and we're going to figure that out. But we're also going to really get after this head coach search. I think that it was noteworthy that he had just made a head coach hire, so hopefully he's got some candidates teed up, or at least some agents and whatnot, agent relationships and whatnot teed up that will help like bring some of those candidates in. He was clear. He's like, if Kerry wants to do that, we'll put him through the process. But he was very clear. It's like, we'll put him through the process.
Yep.
Which is good. Like, and he has a process, and he has a structure, and he has a means by which he goes about this. And he's had to hire 4 head coaches, so he's done this before.
That part alone is reason to be super optimistic. Is that this isn't his first time hiring a head coach. He's done it before. He's done it successfully on more than one occasion, and
the one time it didn't go as well, it was sort of directed to him that he should hire this guy. So like, and he doesn't have that problem anymore, right? So
hopefully not.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, I don't think the ownership group's going to tell him to hire Nick Cushing. Like, I don't think that's going to happen.
No.
And I thought he was clear about that. He's like, I got to make the player. He's like, my first priority is hiring a head coach, but I do need to make player decisions too, and I'm not going to wait for one to get the other done. And I think that it was just a refreshing level of transparency.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's clear he understands what's in front of him. It's clear he understands how much work is in front of him, and it's a lot.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? I mean, we've heard this club talk about analytics before. What are your thoughts on him, like, very much digging into, like, we need to build an analytics department and platform, and I have support from ownership to do that?
That was one of the things that really made me pleased. I mean, I don't think that analytics, especially at this point in time, are a silver bullet. But you can't be taken seriously as a professional football club if you don't have a well-developed analytics department. In my opinion, like, you just can't. And especially when you're in a salary cap league that's parity driven, like MLS, like, when he discussed using every available aspect to acquire players, that applies to the analytics too. Like, you can't leave any stone unturned, and you have to, if you don't have enough people to turn over the stones, then you have to hire people to turn over those stones. You have to use every lever at your disposal to try and bring in talent, and especially when you look at this team, the status of the roster currently, it needs upgrades basically everywhere. And the only way, like analytics is, it's a shortcut to getting started. It helps put you in the ballpark, at least, of the kinds of players you should be looking at, especially if you have a set of principles of play in mind, or a game model in mind, and if you have a coach in mind, even better. All of those things sort of work together, and so I think that being a data-driven professional, like he is, I think that gives him. That gives him a little bit of a leg up in terms of getting this process going and going as quickly as he can.
I think the data-driven part of it, I think, is important to contextualize a little bit. What I think is important about it is that he understands how to interpret data effectively. Right. You can have all the data on Earth. If you don't know how to actually interpret it, gain insights from it, and use it to inform your decisions effectively, it's a bunch of information. It's nothing of value at that point. And what I gathered from that conversation in the press conference today was that he knows how to use that information, and has a structure by which that information helps inform his decisions.
Right.
And has been successful. Excuse me.
Wow.
Has been successful in using that structure that sort of structure model for applying information and applying data to his decision making matrix. That is the hardest part about analytics.
Yep.
I mean, don't get me wrong. The building the algorithms and all that is extremely hard, and it takes a lot of information and data, especially if you're building it yourself, to get it to a place where it's actually providing predictable results. But more than anything, being able to interpret that information effectively into helping you make decisions correctly is the biggest part, and understanding how to weight it. Like, to your point, you discussed, it analytics. We're still a ways away from analytics like being the end all be all in the decision making criteria, but it is a useful piece of information when you're making decisions.
And in modern football, it's an absolute necessity. It's a
necessity.
Piece of
I shouldn't even say useful. It is an integral piece of information towards how you make decisions. And this seems like a guy who's familiar with how to integrate it effectively to make good decisions more regularly. And I think that's the whole point of using analytics and data correctly, or using it in general, is you want to make the right decision more often than the other guy, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole point of using it. And he seems like a guy who has been successful in doing that at a much higher rate than his peers.
Well, I think that was one of the things that jumped out at me of the article Sperry wrote when they first announced the hires. It was in the very last paragraph of Sperry's profile, and he said that he made the comment that NYCFC under Lee annually was one of the top clubs in ASA's analysis of clubs' use of analytics, and I think that's what you hope for is to just be in that conversation of a team that takes it seriously and devotes resources to it and uses it the way that it should be used.
But also, I heard from Tommy Scoops that at one point their scouting staff had completely been obliterated by other teams within CFG Group, and they didn't have anything, and he wasn't able to, he asked for other resources and weren't given them, right? So, like, that's the flip side of the CFG umbrella, is like, if resources need to get moved here or there or whatever, and you don't have them, and you're sort of left flapping on your own. And so I think what he mentioned was taking that sort of global approach and taking it local.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And being able to build it specifically for this club and only for this club, it gets me fired up, man.
Yeah, heck yeah. Yeah.
Like, just the opportunity to, like, have our own shit that's just for us.
Yep.
And he seems to be excited about having that as well. And it's not going to be immediate, right? We've said this so many times on this podcast. It is not as simple as hiring David Lee, injecting however many dollars and saying, do analytics, and we're there. But I do think that he is someone who understands what contract-worthy analytics platforms are out there that we can use in the meantime while building up an analytics staff and whatnot, so that he can get the data necessary to make the decisions he needs to in the short term while building out a structure for the long term. He just, I get the vibe from him that he understands what these things are.
Yeah.
Because he made a short and medium term comment about the analytics staff and building it up, and in the short term they're probably going to have to contract out information like that. That's just the way it works, and there are plenty of platforms out there for doing that to get the type of insights they need so that they can make immediate decisions while they work on the long term plan. And he seemed to understand that, which is just like, hey, it's nice. One last thing I wanted to get your take on. You read Charlie Boehm's article where he interviewed him, right? There was a lot in there about, I don't need to spend a ton of money. I didn't come in here with, I never asked for a budget.
Right.
All the stuff, all those comments. That's going to give some Sporting Kansas City fans a little bit of a concern, right? Because this is notoriously not been the highest spending team in the league. He made comments in there about how New York City wasn't one of the highest spending teams, or a below average spending team in the league, which I don't know is necessarily true. I'd have to look at that, but
I think he mostly just meant at the top end, right? They're not. He
said below average. His comment was below average.
Okay, well,
and I don't believe
maybe
that's
true. Maybe that's the case. Maybe below average on DP spend. I don't know.
Is it?
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, maybe so, but I mean, they're spending north of $5 million on U22s. So I don't consider them to be a below average spending team discretionary wise. But anyway, the spending stuff and sort of almost tamping down, it seems like, his interest in spending on the roster. What do you think about those comments and whether that's going to give some fans pause about what he's going to be doing with this roster?
I mean, I think a couple things can be true. Like, if he wouldn't be working for Sporting Kansas City if he was demanding a blank check. That is just not the way that this ownership group works, and that's probably a good thing. And at the same time, he wouldn't be working for Sporting Kansas City if they weren't going to spend any money, right? If they were going to go the I don't know, Montreal route or even the Colorado Rapids route. I don't think that's what we're looking at. I think we're looking at something in between, which is if you're smart and you do it right, that's the right choice to do, right? Because I think he very correctly, stated there's not really a correlation between the amount you spend and winning in MLS. There is in other leagues because other leagues are different, right? But
they don't have a salary cap.
They don't have a salary cap.
You can really spend as much money as you humanly want, well, within financial fair play standards. Right. But yeah, you can spend as much as you want.
So that makes a difference, and I think that I think he's just again being sort of pragmatic about it and stating that. He just don't expect him to come in and, we're not going to be out there, signing, Messi, or that's just not what Sporting Kansas City is going to do. But that's okay.
We almost signed Ronaldo.
Yeah, almost this close.
I got to do it this time.
It's great. I love it. It never gets old for me. It never gets old for me. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, it was just fun for me to get to do it this time.
Yeah.
I want to be clear. I totally agree with your perspective on this. I feel like I'm always the one camping for these kinds of comments, and so I wanted you to say it because I really do. First of all, a lot of this, like,
so that way people can blame me for having my head shoved up Sporting's ass this time instead of you.
Never mind. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. No, but I think, I mean, it's more that I am often the optimist on this podcast, or often giving the sort of opposite side of the negative point of view about him, and I felt like it was worthwhile for someone else to state this, because I think it's important. I don't think, first of all, I never asked about a budget.
That's bullshit.
Might be technically true.
We all know that's bullshit.
Might be technically true. Maybe he didn't ask, but they told him. They told him what the budget was. Yeah. They told him what they had in mind for expenditure on staffing and departments and things like that. There is no fucking way he signs a 7-year deal to come to Kansas City without having a clear understanding of what he was going to have the wherewithal to accomplish. Yep. I promise you. That is not possible. I listened to this guy talk for half an hour today. There's no fucking way he doesn't have that information. I'm serious about that. So, yeah, maybe he didn't ask. But that information has been provided.
Absolutely.
So, but anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because I know that can sort of twitch at the PTSD of some Sporting Kansas City fans around spending, right? Because that's been an often discussed topic around this club. It's like, are they willing to spend at the level necessary to be competitive? And when I say the level necessary to be competitive, I don't mean Inter Miami. You don't have to spend at that level to be competitive. There are too many teams that are very good this year that are that have beaten Miami several times. Vancouver is a good example of this. That have not had to spend exorbitant amounts of money. They've just done it really well.
Yep.
And that's why you hire a David Lee to use all of the functions within the league and the salary cap and whatnot to be able to build your team out well. I love the fact that he talked about like we need to operate in the global transfer market. We need to be buying and selling players. We need. Someone asked about. I think they were talking about like the last big transfer with Gianluca Busio. He's like, no, we need to be doing this because we get the allocation money. We can use that allocation money. And it's like your guy right here that
Yep.
like loves the roster building bullshit, the allocation
Yep.
money. I'm like, oh my god, like this
Yep.
is my guy. This is my guy. He's talking about allocation money in a press conference. But like seriously, like
Yeah, I think
this
that
guy
I think
understands you have to do all the things, and it doesn't necessarily need to be $50 million on DPS
right.
in order to be. In fact, that can be a failure, as we've seen. Like it's more about like being smart about how you use your money and in using everything to make the team good.
Well, and in terms of selling players, like it doesn't have to be, $10 million for, Busio, right? It doesn't. It is probably better for the team and more sustainable to sell a bunch of homegrowns for 2-3 million bucks a pop, and that's what other clubs in MLS have been doing.
Or
And
you sign a U-22 and you move him on for what you paid for him, or
there
you
you
move him
go.
on for 2 million more,
Right.
and then you like
Yep.
like that was I said this last week. If you look at in New York City's experience, like net transfer spend over the last 6 years, it is in the green. And maybe that's what he's saying when he's saying that they're not spending above average in the league when it comes to transfers because he has been successful
at
at
selling.
not losing money on his players.
Yeah. That would, I mean, that is another one of those things that you and I have talked about a lot, and I think we would both be very happy to see that.
Well, so with this ownership group,
Sure
they
they
don't want to
would.
write $10 million checks every year.
Right.
Like, I mean, it's not that they can't, but they're not going to sit here and just like continue to dump money in the roster
Right.
with no potential of it like achieving some sort of benefit. I don't think it's realistic to expect a team to run a positive transfer record all the time. Like it's
Sure.
not. And the only ones that do are generally they're like Ajax or Benfica or Porto or somebody like that. Like there are very
Factories.
few teams, that do this regularly. But you can run sort of right at the line or slightly in the red over a 10-year span, and ownership will be fine with that.
Yeah.
And move players in and out and bring new quality players in and send new quality players on. This is how the global game works. And it sounds like David Lee is interested in this club operating in that way. And I think that's the thing. It's like we are so used to this club being like, oh my God, we got a good player. We hold on to him forever.
Yeah.
Like, can't let this fucking guy go.
No.
Like, it turned a bunch of people into a tailspin when Weeby talked about Joveljic potentially leaving. And I understand why. Like, when's the last time we had a guy who scored 20 goals in a season? It was fucking
He's
Dom
the,
Dwyer.
the one silver lining to this whole season. Yeah.
And so I understand why, but that is how the global game works.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can buy Joveljic for $4 million and sell him for $15 million, that's fucking good business.
Hell yeah,
man.
it is.
And you have to also have faith in the guy in the front office at using that profit and using that $15 million you got to make the team better. And I think that's the part this fan base is not used to.
Right, and the goal is obviously then to get to a place where you've built your squad with enough quality and enough depth that you can sell your better players and then have replacements built in ready for them. Like that's the way that other competent clubs, even in MLS, that's the way that they run things.
Sometimes it goes wrong, right? Like
Sure.
Columbus is struggling right now because they sold Cucho when they didn't want to, and this is a whole separate conversation about the schedule and when you have to sell players, and
Yeah.
there's a whole separate thing involved there. And then they sort of signed Gazdag, who was not the right fit, I don't think, for what they were doing, and then they get Wessam Abu Ali, who they wanted to sign in January, but Al Ali would not let him go. And then they get him, and then he gets injured. So, like, a bunch of bad shit sort of happened to Columbus in this circumstance, but it doesn't mean that they did it wrong.
Right. It just means they were unlucky.
Yeah, I mean that happens to so many teams all the time.
Yep.
And in MLS, the margins are so fine that if something like that happens, you don't compete for the cup that year,
Yep.
right? I mean, it's just kind of how that shit goes. And I'll be interested over the next 10 years to kind of see how fans start to interpret this stuff, because I think this is going to be more common, where you have a really good player and you shoot to the top of the league, and then that player gets sniped for somewhere else, and can you backfill them with the right player, and can they fit in at the right time? And like, that is going to be much more of a talking point than it ever has been, because this league hasn't really competed for players in this area
Yeah.
before, right? Like regularly.
I
It
think
wasn't
moving to a European schedule will help mitigate that to at least some degree. Like if you're not losing, one of your top players in the summer, if you're not pulling a Minnesota, right, where you sell one of your top
yeah.
players, and then
Tony Olashea goes to
and then
Valencia. Yeah.
and then immediately after that, like his replacement gets injured for the rest of the season, you're just screwed at that point. There's nothing you can
Right.
do.
Unless you play Sporting Kansas City, then you're fine.
For real, man. Yikes.
We're gonna get there. I have some thoughts about that game.
Dude.
But I do think to put a tie on this one, the understanding of the fact that this club needs to be more active in the global transfer market and participate in it, that was warming to me to hear, because that's another thing that I've said over and over again that I thought was a Vermes problem, is that he wasn't just asking for money, he was never replenishing it. He was always asking for it, right? His mindset was, I need money to sign these guys, but he wasn't ever selling them to recuperate any of that investment.
Well,
And
you have to play and develop young players in order
right.
to for that
And
to
Lee
happen.
talked about that too. Like, the pro player pathway needs work.
Big
He
time.
said that it needs work.
Yeah.
But also, I think I said this to Sperry, I'm not sure it's the most high priority option at this time,
It
because
shouldn't be.
I do think the academy has improved since Yogi's taken over, and it's so hard. Like, the lag in changing an academy director to like seeing results is so big that
Yeah.
we're like right at the point where you'd start to see results, and I feel like we're seeing them. So I'm almost like, maybe that's not the highest priority thing for us to work on at this time. It's more the stuff that like Raj was hired to do, which was take those 17-year-olds and make them 19 and 20-year-old pros,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And instead of Raj sitting on the bench every fucking week and trying to do tactical shit, like, we need that guy doing that stuff, which I think he'd be very good at.
Yeah.
I think it was a really smart hire for them to hire him to do that. He just hasn't been able to do that because they have nobody.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see kind of how that stuff works out, and I feel like somebody like Raj is probably gonna have a place regardless of what happens with the coaching staff.
I hope so.
We'll see. I guess we'll see. I don't know. I have no idea what's gonna happen, but it was nice to have a lot of your assumptions about what David Lee was and why he was here be confirmed
Yes.
and corroborated, and make you feel even better. Like, my assumptions that made me feel really optimistic were then confirmed, that made me feel even more optimistic about like what he's coming to do here. And we got a long ways to go. As he said, there's a lot of work to do. Like, a lot of work to do. But he understands that. Like, he doesn't seem to be shying away from it. He understands
Yeah.
there's a ton of work to do, right?
There's no reason really not to be optimistic about this. And that's not to say that it's a slam dunk, because there are no slam dunks. But I mean, yeah,
It's a front office
it's
executive.
been-
How would you possibly know that you did it and
Right.
hit it out of the park until a year from now? Like,
it's
you
been
really can.
it's been so dire and so grim that like it's going to be better. It might take a little bit of time, but it's going to be better, and it's not going to be perfect in all likelihood, but that's okay, because it doesn't have to be perfect in order to be good. And I think that sporting fans need to be a little bit patient. I know that's a lot big ask because I think sporting fans have shown an inordinate amount of patience so far. But a little patience, and I think that things will come together. I think a lot quicker than probably slower than we hope, but a lot quicker than maybe we think. And so I think I believe me, I have tried to look for the negatives, and I don't see a lot of them. And so I think that I'm ready to be heard again. Let's go.
I was gonna say, if anyone could find the negatives, it would be you. And I felt like you would have pointed several of them out.
I have a brand. I have a brand to maintain. So yeah.
Yeah. I think that you're right. There's going to be some impatience, and that impatience is well earned at this point. But also, I feel like everyone that's a fan of this club knows that the season ends a week from Saturday, and
just watch the team.
We're in a black hole.
Look at how bad the team is. Like, wow, they have a long way to go.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that, because they played a game.
Do we have to? Do we? Holy shit! Wow.
We do a podcast.
Oh my god. That. Wow.
They technically played a soccer game on Saturday.
Honestly, what we should have done, and I'm kind of kicking myself for not suggesting it, is we should have done a like a Discord watch along or a Riverside watch along, whatever. And because I was drinking beers with
Nolan and Dan because I needed it.
I would have been talking so much shit because holy crap, they were just from the outset. It was a shit show. The lineup was a shit show. The personnel choice was a shit show. It was just grotesque in all aspects. Yikes.
Remember like 20 seconds ago when I was saying if there was something negative to find, Cody would find it. He was waiting for this moment of the podcast because brother.
Well,
I'm not disagreeing with you, by the way.
It
was a fucking mess.
I saw that we were
mess.
I saw we were getting a 3-man back line. I was like, okay, here we go. And then I saw who was like on the field, and I was like, oh man, this is so bad. And you and I
Jake Davis, noted wingback. Jake Davis.
He seemed displeased to be playing that position and that role. He did not seem into it at all. He was like strolling into the midfield and throwing balls.
Gesticulating wildly at teammates.
I have not seen him look like that, and I don't know if ever his body language.
I'm sorry, y'all, but I'm laughing
terrible.
because this is booty. This is booty. Everything about this performance was so booty.
It was so obvious that whatever was going on, he was just not there for it. Whether it was the playing wingback thing, I don't know, but he was just like he was just pissed. Maybe he was pissed at having to play with and having to play on the wing while Radia ate up fucking minutes doing jack shit in the midfield. I'd be pissed too, honestly. But oh man, just brutal. This is brutal.
You're back, dude. We spent like 52 minutes gushing about David Lee. You're back, and I love it.
I mean, the one thing is it was way more entertaining to watch Jake Davis throw a little hissy fit every time something didn't go his way than it would have been to watch Kyrie Shelton get just rounded time and time again.
Well, would he? As a wingback,
I don't know, man.
I don't know. Shelton as a wingback is less. I would say he's slightly less.
We're done.
Ridiculous to me. I mean, we're all done. I mean, and I listen.
Who had the highest? Which sporting player had the highest G+ rating
in the game?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. Hold on. I don't know. I haven't looked at this.
There is no way in hell you can tell me the top 5. The top 5 were all between 60 and 70.
Minnesota. Minnesota had 60.
No. Minnesota didn't. Minnesota had only 2 above 60.
What?
Sporting had 5 above 60, but you will never
A G plus.
you will never believe who they are.
I'm trying to think. Maybe Robert Volliter, was he
So
in there?
4 were tied at 60. Robbie Volliter was one of them. Radia
Yeah.
was another. Toy was
no.
another.
I thought Toy might be up there.
Montez was one. And then in the lead at 67 in the G plus rating was Ian James.
I mean,
It's just wild.
it just shows you G plus is a fucking flawed.
It is
metric.
ridiculous. It makes me laugh and roll my eyes more than any other metric out there. Honestly, it's so funny.
So okay, we've joked and laughed and giggled about this enough. I do have a bone to pick with our guy Kerry Zavagnin, who may or may not be inserting himself into the head coaching search for this club.
I would say with this coaching performance, he withdrew his name formally from consideration.
I mean, it feels that. I mean, it certainly. I would agree with your assessment of that. So, I have 2 thoughts about this. Right, one of them is, okay, you go to a back 3 to try, and his post game comments made sense with why you would go to a back 3. We've literally been saying all the same things on this podcast for like a fucking month. This team sucks defensively. Maybe drawing another defender back and putting a double pivot in front of that back 3 would help solidify your defense. Okay, cool. Instead,
Not only that, may I add, worst set piece defense in the league. Might want to get some more people in there. Okay.
Hold on. Hold on. We're gonna get there. I promise. Okay. So you bring a third center back in, but you actually don't put a double pivot in front of them. You put a single pivot in front of them in a 3-5-2, and you make it Nemanja Radoja. So that is your choice, and then you put Memo Rodriguez and Zorn Basong in front of him. So you've put a bunch of like supposedly defensive-minded midfielders out there in front of your back 3, except none of them are very good at defending.
And 2 of them can't cover any ground.
Yeah, there's one guy who covers ground, and it's a converted left back who's on your supplemental roster.
Zavagnin drank so much he looked at Radia and he saw Caicedo. He was like, okay, this can work. I can do this.
So not only that, then your goal is to use Minnesota's game plan against them. You're going to make Minnesota possess the ball and try to break you down. Except you forgot that Minnesota loves set pieces, plays for set pieces, and your guys love to foul in the midfield. So I'm sorry, man. I'm on a rant here because this pissed me off so much watching this live. I was so upset. So you just keep giving up free kicks in the fucking inside of 35 yards because your guys make bad fouls because Minnesota's playing for these plays. Long throws, corners, free kicks.
Yep.
Like, that is literally their game plan. All we do is play for these. And as you noted so succinctly earlier, your team sucks at defending set pieces, and you just gave up these beautiful, like, half-cross free kicks over and over again, and what happens? You get scored on, and scored on, and scored on. And, well, you get scored on, and then John Pulskamp does a fucking madness, and then you get scored on, right? Like, I said this to you on text. I was like, I've been sort of like, kind of like teetering on the Kerry Zavagnin thing, and is he good or is he not? And the last couple of weeks, I've kind of gotten towards I don't really think this is the right guy to lead a team towards the progress that we're expecting. And when I watched this game, I was so upset. Like, I was so frustrated and upset by it. And maybe it's irrational, and, I'm sure the level, the performance of the players is a big part of this. But also, you have to know who your players are and put them in positions to succeed. And I thought he did the exact opposite of that in this game.
Yeah, there was no, the thing I texted you right away is that there's sure you have two forwards. You have a forward who can play underneath and score goals in Joveljic, and you have a forward to stretch the back line and Mason Toy. But literally, you have no one to pass to them.
Who's giving them the ball?
No one. And like
that's probably
all
why
of your,
Ian James has a plus 67 because
yep.
he was the only guy passing the ball forward.
Your most creative attacking players are nowhere to be found. They're on the bench, and you can't win games like that, especially when you're not a well-drilled defensive team. And we know this team is not that, right? We know that that's not something that Zavagnin really.
The number of times I watched Radia receive the ball on a potential half turn and just turn back the other way and pass it backwards.
Yeah, it was like he was allergic to forward passes.
I actually watched him half turn just naturally, stop, turn around, wait for the pressure to hit his back, and then pass backwards.
And we both saw him.
I almost wanted to throw things at the television. Dude.
We both saw him receive the ball, and Memo was like 15 yards upfield, and he looked right at Memo. Memo had nobody anywhere near him. And he turned around and passed the ball back, I think, to Montez.
And Memo was like, "Yo!"
And Memo was like, "What the fuck?" And I was like, "Memo," I was like, "What the fuck? Like, why would you do that? Like, there's just no point. There wasn't anybody within 20 yards of Memo.
This man makes $1.5 million a year.
It's crazy, man. Stealing money."
I mean, good on you, bro. I mean, I'm happy for you. Like, get that money. Like, I'm not mad at you for getting that money. I just wish you were better at soccer.
Yeah, or not on my team. That's really what I wish.
Can you go play for Manchester United or something?
Are we picking on different teams now? Because I can do that too.
I mean, well, Sam's gonna get mad if we talk about Arsenal. Okay, so I'm just
gonna... we can definitely pick on Man United.
Yeah. We can, I'm happy to do
that. That's a team full of the most punchable faces in football, and that's
a fact.
That's a fact.
Bruno Fernandes is the most punchable person in world soccer.
Yeah, he's a disgrace to the name Bruno. Let's be honest. The best Bruno was on display in black and white this weekend, and he did the trick. So
yeah. I know you love Guimaraes. He's actually a good player.
He's like the platonic ideal of a central midfield to me. He's just the best. I wish he played for my team, but that's okay. I mean, and in all honesty,
I think your team's doing okay. But
I think they are.
I think your team's doing okay.
In all honesty, I mean that is. I mean, obviously, Sporting is never going to be able to sign like a player of that caliber, but I mean that's sort of the profile of midfielder that a team like Sporting needs to be looking
Bruno
for.
Guimaraes. So like, hey, can we get Rodri? Hey, can we call up? He's got that City Football Group. Like,
obviously the
can
MLS version.
Here?
Oh my God! Yeah, I knew when I started talking that it was going to end badly. You know what I mean.
Look, David Lee knows the City Football Group guys. He can just call me, "Hey, Rodri, how you doing, bud? You want to come to Kansas City?"
He's got to know. He's got to know somebody.
Have you seen these facilities?
Send him a.
The colors are very similar.
Send him a barbecue care package. That's all I can say.
Oh man. Now I'm just gonna be dreaming of Rodri playing the 6 for Sporting, and that's
no, I don't.
That's never happening.
No.
But it would be brilliant if he did, but
yeah. I don't need famous players on Sporting, honestly. I just want better players. I just want good players and competitive players, and I really
a lot better ones than were on the field against Minnesota. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah, yes. I want the club I support to be a bitch to play against, honestly, and I want teams to be afraid to play against them, and that even above and beyond like winning trophies, like that's the thing that I miss the most in this current iteration of Sporting is that they're just so toothless and so. I mean, they're just pointless, right? They're pointless in attack. They're pointless in defense.
It's gotten pretty bad the last like 3 months or so. Like there
They
was at
can't
least
do anything.
at least in the midseason there was like some level of entertainment that was involved. It's gotten to the point now where it's just so dour
They
and
that this is a team that if they just threw on every attacker they had and just all out tried to score a goal on against Houston, like I don't know if they could honestly, and on the and we know that if
it's a
they
fair
just
point.
and we know that if they just went all out defense and tried to put like 10 players behind or 11 players behind the ball, we know that they couldn't keep the ball out of the net. So
I mean, that's what they did to Minnesota.
I know
And Minnesota doesn't even like possessing the ball.
they
And they
can't
gave
do
up 3 goals.
they can't do anything, right? They can't, and that's one of the big indictments on Zavagnin for me is that like the team has just kind of gotten worse overall, but they don't do anything well.
Okay.
Right?
Let me make one point in Zavagnin's. I mean, it's not towards Zavagnin. It's just I think this roster is so fucking terrible. Like it just is what it is. So we watched Atlanta United try to run this exact same tactic against LAFC.
Yeah.
And we know Atlanta United has good players, right? They spend a lot of money. They have good quality players. And Ronnie Dyla ran the 5-4-1 against LAFC, and for the most part, kept LAFC at bay.
Yep.
Kept a team who wants to create transition on their own. Maybe not as much as Minnesota, where they'll like sit back and try to transition, but they'll use turnovers in the midfield or whatnot to create quick transition events.
Yep.
And Atlanta kept them from doing any of that. Now, granted, they still have Denny Bouanga and Heung-min Son, so Bouanga eventually scores and they win. It was very much, it reminded me of like what Laura Harvey and the Rain tried to do to the Current, where it's like we're going to do no soccer and see if you can beat us. And eventually Temwa scored, and that's how they beat him. And similarly, eventually Bouanga scored, and that's how Atlanta got beat. But they at least kept LA from doing stuff. I don't believe this team could do that.
No.
Right? They're just so bad that they're not able to even do that. And that's a problem. I mean, that's how you end up in spoon contention.
Yep.
Right? Like, it's just, this roster sucks.
It does. And it makes it even more impressive and honestly amazing that Joveljic has scored 18 goals for this trash
and they have
team.
7 fucking wins. How does this team have 7 wins? 7.
Even
7.
Even a broken clock is right twice a day, Drew.
It's not 7 times.
Yeah, well, there you go. That is true. Yeah.
How do they?
I mean, you know, those two things are connected, right? Like Joveljic being able to score 18 goals and the team somehow getting to 7 wins. And have they won a game since Manu was injured? I don't think so.
There was one.
There
was one. I mean, you're asking me to,
Yeah, I'm not talking to Mike Kuhn. I should realize that, and just I shouldn't have even asked the question.
Colorado. Remember, they will beat Colorado at home.
Okay, right.
4-2.
That underlines how special of a player Joveljic is, and I think that even though I think that Manu is also a special player, and I think that he's a lot better than some folks give him credit for, and he was a victim of injuries and also being on a bad team and also being shackled to, numbnuts there at right wing. But I think that I do think that Manu presents some interesting challenges and trade-offs in terms of building the team moving forward. And I mean, that's a subject probably for another day, but I think that's something to, just something I've been thinking about moving forward when I'm thinking about rebuilding the roster and how the team looks moving into next season.
I'll be interested to see how David Lee sort of evaluates Manu and what the best way is to use him, and finding a coach that wants to use him in those ways, because he is he is a specific type of player that is different than the traditional 10. And Joe and I talked about this last week.
Yep.
The closest model to him is Darlington Nagbe, who's about to retire this year, who has been candidly one of the best MLS players of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And but Darlington wasn't near as effective in the attacking zones as
Right.
Manu is. So I think, but Manu might not be near as ball secure as Darlington is either. So like we've seen Manu try to do some of the Darlington stuff in the defensive third and give up the ball. So
Yeah.
I think that they're slightly different in that regard, but I also think that there's a player in there that can be very useful
Yep.
and has a very useful skill set. And I think that David Lee is going to, and I also don't think he's going anywhere. Like I said to Joe, this is a guy, and Daniel Sperry profiled him in the Kansas City Star, and he talked about how he was so interested in being part of rebuilding this franchise. So I think of him more as Maxi Morales when he signed in 27 when he was 27 than a guy who's moving on to something else.
Sure.
Maybe Joveljic moves on, maybe other players move on, but I think Manu is going to be the guy that's here when he's 35. That's the feeling that I get based on kind of what his idea was when he came here. And so if you know that and you have that skilled of a player, how do you build a philosophy around maximizing him as a DP and your other DPs?
So I think, and that's really the issue, right? Is that he's a DP, and so when you're paying a player, when you're taking up a DP spot and that DP salary, then you kind of have to some extent build your team around that player, and so it's just an interesting thing. I don't have a lot of fully fleshed out ideas, but I have been thinking about it, and we can talk more about that, especially as we move into the off season.
Do you think that they shouldn't be investing in him as a DP? Because that was Joe's sort of mindset about it. It was like maybe investing in this type of player as a DP isn't the best idea.
I mean, I think that ship has kind of sailed, so it's not worth worrying about. But I do see Joe's.
I mean, they can sign him. They can sign him to an extension next
Sure.
year and get his transfer fee off his
I
deal.
I do, just as a general principle, I do agree with Joe in that you should pay DP money for goals and for attacking players, and that's not really what Manu is. He's kind of like attacking adjacent, right? Like he's not like a full-on number 10. He's not a goal-scoring winger. He's not obviously
his expected assists versus actual assists is quite a bit disparate, and it makes me wonder. It makes me wonder if he's overperforming or if it's a misunderstanding of kind of what a deeper midfielder does to pass.
Right.
I think that all of these models are a little bit sort of built towards the structures of players that we like, striker,
Yep.
10,
Yep.
winger, right?
Midfielders, central midfielders are just notoriously difficult to capture meaningful data on, right? Like it's one of the most difficult players to sort of evaluate, and in no small part because they're so
he's
different.
99th percentile in assists per 90 for a central midfielder, which should tell you something. Like,
but there's a good player there. That's what it says. There's somebody there, right? Like there's something there to work with for sure.
So I don't know. We'll see. My bias on Manu Garcia is very well known. So that's part of the problem. Is like I really like him as a player, and so I am always probably going to defend him a little bit because I really enjoy the way he plays. More than anything, I was reading an article earlier today that was talking about scouts going through it was like a thing about like scouting reports on different players from like 10 years ago, and somebody was making there was a thing in there about Ricky Pooch, and he was like, he knows where the ball goes before it gets to him, not very physical. Yeah, I was like, yeah, that's an appropriate that's an appropriate scouting report on Ricky.
I really miss Ricky Pooch.
He's a fun player, man. This whole article was talking about like when he was younger at Barcelona, they thought he was an ex-Messi because he anticipates play so well. And I only say that to say that Manu Garcia is the only player that Sporting Kansas City's had in the last 15 years that I've seen that plays that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I totally agree that there's absolutely a player in there. It's just a tricky player to build a team around, and that's kind of what you have to do if he's a designated player. And so like I totally agree with you, but I also agree with a lot of what Joe was saying, and it just presents some issues, right? Like in thinking about, I mean, because like you really kind of have to consider the squad as practically a blank slate at this point, right? Like,
Right.
yes, if you don't sell Joveljic, that's a in ink starter. Manu, it has to be an in ink starter because he's your designated player, and then everything else is kind of like up for grabs, like for real. And and that in some aspects is crippling because there's so many options, right? There's so many options of what you could do. You can try and get a midfield like strongman partner and run Manu in a double pivot. You can revert to the 4-3-3, which we talked about, probably really suits his skill set maybe more ideally, but that presents build out or squad building issues in other areas of the field. So it's just like it's a really fascinating problem, and it's almost like there's just too much to deal with. There's too many. There's too much open roster spots to even really think about, and so like
But
I
I think of that as actually an ability to go in multiple directions, right? So like
yeah, absolutely,
you have discussed a couple different ways that it can be employed effectively that can be based on who you're able to recruit around him.
yeah,
And so you are able to recruit XYZ. Like if you get the next version of Andreas Kubas and he's willing to come to Kansas City,
oh God,
throw him back in the double pivot. Let's go inverted forwards and let's go, right? Like let's do this. 3-4-2-1, right? Like I think that there are ways like but if Andreas Kubas isn't available, but this metronomic six from Spain that's elite is, right? And
only if you play for Barcelona B. That's the
not,
sporting rule.
definitely not. But like a version of Jeppe Tverskov or something like that, or a 2017 version of Ilya Sanchez comes along, bro. Like that would be fucking great. Let's go 4-3-3. Let's do it that way. I think there are options. And I think that that's the point is like you go through your recruitment practice, you understand that you have all of this opportunity in salary and in salary budget to be able to invest in different ways, and you see what's available to you.
The whole problem is that you have to decide which options you're picking up and which you're not before that happens. And so
I don't think that those things are mutually exclusive. I think
no,
I
I don't
really
think so
do.
either.
I think you make those decisions beforehand,
Yeah.
and you move on after that, and maybe you come back to a similar structure to what Vermees had in the first place. That doesn't mean it's wrong. It just because it's a similar structure to what Vermees used to do doesn't mean it's wrong.
Right.
It just means that you're doing it with better players.
Right. Well, and I think to a point that you've made in the past, it might mean that Sporting's not replacing 16 players this offseason. They're replacing 10 to 12 players, and so just fans need to be, I think, prepared for that possibility that there might be more players kept than we might really suspect or want at this point. And I think that because there is such a short window to make these signings and make these decisions, and because there's so much roster available to improve upon. I would not be surprised if we saw maybe some more signings than we would probably prefer.
I don't want to read too much into what David Lee was saying in his press conference. I get the feeling that they're going to go get some data analytics from some type of model they can contract on all of these players, and he's gonna have some he's gonna have some thoughts about some of them, and people are gonna have to tell him yes or tell him why he shouldn't do what he's doing. Like that's the feeling that I get from some of it.
Then it might be 16 because because at least the publicly available data on the players that are currently for the team,
it sucks.
It sucks.
It sucks.
They suck.
And
they're terrible.
And you're talking about a guy who has turned over a lot of roster before, so he's not afraid of doing that. And fuck, this team sucked this year, man.
Yeah.
So like, what do you have to lose by being aggressive with it?
I mean, we keep saying they sucked, but I mean, I think it's just instructive to point out like how deeply and comprehensively they sucked, and how
They're the worst
little,
team in the league.
how
I mean, wooden spoon irrelevant. I don't care like if they win the wooden spoon or not. They are statistically the worst team in the league.
yeah, and due especially to Manu's injury issues,
They got way worse. Yeah.
Joveljic was literally the only bright spot on the team, and that includes Miller, who I enjoyed watching for periods of the season, and Bartlett, who I enjoyed watching for periods of the season.
Well,
But
we've said this over and over. It's like, did we like
holy
them because
crap.
they were good, or did we like them because comparatively they were good?
Right, and I think that just they were bad. Like they're just bad. They're bad.
It's like, does Shoppy look great in practice because he's playing against Sporting Kansas City? Like, I think like those are reasonable questions to ask. Look, I didn't want to doom spiral into this. They're not a very good team right now, and I think all of us know that they're not a very good team right now, and all of us are excited about the David Lee signing because
Yes.
it means a potential for us improving that situation. So that is what we're going to focus on.
And we don't have to watch them this week, so that's great.
That is a fact. We're not even going to get into one thing to look for this week because there's nothing to look for because they don't play. So let's get into potpourri real quick. The U.S. men's national team, that is the one thing to look for this over the next week or so. The U.S. men's national team is back in camp. Mauricio
I'm just
Pochettino.
ready. I'm ready for all the meltdowns. Let's go.
Meltdowns about what? What do you think? What are your favorite
Anything.
meltdowns? What are you
Anything.
expecting for?
Like poor performances, that would be number one. Like
By MLS players or by our guy Weston McKinney?
like any of the above, right? Like I think that
I mean, Wes hasn't been in a camp for a minute, so like
he hasn't, but my guy's looking. He's looking pretty slim and trim and ready to go. So
and as per usual, right before camp, all of a sudden he's getting minutes again for Juventus. Like
Weird.
it's like couldn't get in the lineup. All of a sudden, central midfielder starter. Like he was playing like wing back as a sub.
yeah, that was disheartening for sure.
He was playing fucking right wing back as a sub. Next thing I know, all of a sudden he's starting Champions League games in central midfield.
All the more reason why Poch should go with a back three, because we got lots of wing back experience.
Yeah, we do have. Honestly, Tim Weah is a wing back. I don't hate. So much.
I don't hate it
that
either.
at all. So the camp is set up a little bit for a back three. It obviously he found some success in the second half against South Korea, it was the second half against Japan, and then all of South Korea. Playing this 3-4-2-1. James Sands is in camp, who can play as a 6 or as a middle of a back three. Has been very good for St. Pauli this year, by the way. We're seeing Poch, like he said, it's weird because he was like, I'm not going to bring in players I haven't seen, but we're done experimenting after the September window. And he brings in a bunch of players he's never seen.
When all your players are getting hurt or not playing, I mean, what are you going to do?
And there's a lot of hurt players right now, too,
There
which
are.
has some impact on what this roster is. And Joe Lowry even discussed that on TSS today. It's like, how much can we take away from what this roster is, given the fact that there are so many injuries? But it does look like a roster that's set up to play in a back three, right? Mm-hmm. Like that seems like what it is. Yeah.
Yep.
Especially given our everyone's favorite right back that never was, Joe Scally, not being in the lineup or not being in the roster, like leads more to the thought of it being a back three.
That I think that bridge is fully burned.
It
I
seems
think
like it was. The donuts and the golf cart seem to have ended that.
it seems Jake Davis has a better chance of being called in to play right back than Joe Scally at this point.
Or Nathan Harriel. I mean, I'm not that worried about it either way. I do think what I'm interested to see if they play in a back three is how Jedi works as a wing back. That would be my thing that would be of highest interest, because we're normally used to seeing he is very much a traditional left back. He's an overlapping traditional left back.
I think
he'll
he'll function fine.
I think so too, but I'm interested to see it because it's not. Has Fulham played in a back three much?
Not that I've ever seen.
I didn't think so.
Every time I watch them, they are four at the back.
So
But
I just
he also has not played hardly at all for them this season. He's been
he's
coming
been
back from
hurt,
injury,
right?
so yeah.
Yeah. But he's obviously our best left back. Like that's not even close to a conversation. So
He's our only left back, Drew.
well, Serge can play left
Oh my
back.
God. People need to get the fuck off of that. No. Like he can't I mean, sure he can, I guess. As much as Tim Ream plays left back. I mean, come on. He's not a left back.
No, he's not. Yeah, it's like Jedi and take your choice between like John Tolkien and Max Arston,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Arf Dog is in the camp.
Of course
So
he is. Man.
well, Poch loves him.
Poach
Poch loves him.
Poach loves some Arf Dog. So
Listen, I mean, he was pretty good against Japan, so
yeah.
we'll give him that. Or South Korea. I can't. Which game was first? I can't remember. Who cares? The the thing that's interesting to me is like the commentary. I'm more interested in the Poch press conferences now than I am about the players and who was chosen, because it's become like this huge thing where all of these reporters are reporting on the fact that Poch doesn't like call players and tell them why they weren't or were not called up.
That's classic. That's just classic soccer coach thing. Like, you know, I begged my kids' coaches to like talk to them and tell them why they weren't getting called up to, you know, the team above or what they were doing wrong, and I had to twist that information out of coaches. They don't like talking about that stuff. They just make a decision and that's that. They don't like justifying.
But bro, we're talking about the fucking national team.
Yeah,
You didn't
it's
get
crazy.
called up. You didn't get called up, and you're expecting like a kumbaya with the coach as to why.
No, his explanation for that I think was really good. Where he was like, you know, like no,
fantastic.
I'm not going to give you an explanation. But if you want to know what you can do better, I'm here to have that conversation with you. That's exactly what you want.
I love that you said that because everyone missed that part of the conversation. Everyone missed.
That's
his
the most
quote.
important
What
part.
everyone missed. It was like, no, I'm not going to sit here and be like telling you like why you didn't get picked up. I'm not over here like I. But the other part of it is he wants them to go back to their club and work their fucking ass off. Like I didn't get picked.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be like oh, bro, it's okay. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Maybe he'll come back next time. No, he wants that guy to go back to his club, work his fucking ass off to try to get back to the national team. That's what you should be trying to do every single time.
Yep.
And is like, if there are things that, like, if you come back to him and be like, what things can I be working on? He'll be like, yo, think you need to do this.
Yeah.
Weird. It's just like normal kind of shit. Because it's like, oh, he's not calling Christian Pulisic for like 4 months. Why? Bro, what are we talking about?
I don't know. It's just I don't know, man. It's a
Is this like a Gen Z thing? Is this like a I think it is. I need to be communicated with. Like I'm so used to having constant communication that I need it because like I haven't talked to my dad in like 3 weeks and like that's just normal shit, dude.
Yeah. When I went to college, I went like 2 years without even seeing my parents, and I was okay with that, and they were okay with that. It was just we would talk on the phone every once in a while, whatever. But whatever.
I mean, when I was in the Army, I talked to my dad like every couple months.
Yeah.
And might see him at Christmas.
Yeah. Gen Z are soft. You heard it here first.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. Gen Z or something. No, but I do think
I think
like it's a different perspective.
American
right?
Gen Zers in specific. You know, I think that one of the things that I heard discussed this week was just sort of the mindset specifically of Argentinian footballers and just their willingness to like fight and scrap and just do whatever it took to win. Like regardless of the context, and I think that that's what a lot of American players are kind of missing a little bit. They just don't have that. They just don't have the dog in them like that, right? And you know, we've seen moments where like Weston McKennie will come out and he's up for the big games and like but like like he doesn't play that way every single game. If he did, he'd probably be an elite player. I mean, frankly, right? Because he's proven he can hang at that level. So if he had that level of intensity every time he walked onto the field, we would probably never be making jokes about him losing his parking spot, or being on the chopping block again and
Or
worming his way back
getting
into the
kicked
team.
out of the team because he
Right.
went to get
I mean,
laid while he's in Nashville.
those are funny stories, and like they add to like his vibey aura and shit. But realistically, that lack of seriousness and that lack of drive probably keeps him from being an elite player, and as such, it holds the USA back, because the USA has one elite player. That's it. And you can't get out of a group stage with one elite player unless you play comprehensively good around them, and they have not
It's
shown
kind
that
of
they can do that.
funny. It's kind of funny that the one guy that got derided for like talking shit about the whole situation, about like backing out this summer, is the best player on the team by a wide fucking margin. Like, it's not even close. Like,
Yeah.
and you see him, he just came in with a fuck you attitude to Serie A this year. Just like, I'm going to just fucking nut up and tell all of you to fuck off. And it's been a while since the U.S. has had players like that, right? Like, they used to have a lot of those guys, and it's weird to say Pulisic is the only one because he's such a milquetoasty dude in regular, like, parlance. But when he's on the soccer pitch, he just doesn't give a fuck. He just goes and plays hard. Yeah. And I would say that he has gone through enough like experience in Europe, like from going from Dortmund to Chelsea and then being on again, off again, on again, off again at Chelsea, and then coming to Milan. I think has made him a better soccer player. I really do. And I think a lot of these guys, and even Weston losing his number and his parking place and all that shit, he always works his way back in. So maybe that's why he never none of them have that level of dog. Like, there's the whole thing about Clint Dempsey with, he's like, there's the joke about him and Micah Richards when they came up against each other in the Premier League. And he was like, where the fuck you from? He's like, I'm from fucking Nacogdoches, oldest city in East Texas. What? And that's Clint, right? Like, that's Clint. And
I gotta tell you, like, I don't know, a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I drove through Nacogdoches for the first time. And,
oh, really?
And I had built it up in my mind
there.
because it was like,
there,
the home of Clint Dempsey, and I was like, what the fuck?
Bro, he lived in a trailer park, man. There is not much there.
Yeah.
There's not much there. But it's the oldest city in Texas, but I love that. That's what I'm saying is, like, having that level of swag and having that level of fucking dog is not something that many of these guys have, man.
No, they don't.
And you were talking about all that. I was reminded of watching this team play against Uruguay in that Copa America match in Arrowhead, and watching Rodrigo Bentancur, who I am very familiar with because he plays for Tottenham Hotspur, look like the doggiest motherfucker on earth out there. And I'm like, where is this guy when Spurs play? Like, can I have this guy when Tottenham plays, please?
His soul has left his body. He's not there, that's for sure. Because that is not the player that I ever see for that team.
No, but he was absolutely wrecking the midfield in that game.
Yeah.
And I think that goes to what you're saying is, like, there's a difference about playing for your country and whatnot, that just and I don't want to get all jingoistic about it. I don't think it needs to be that. I'm just saying that these guys don't have that level of intensity.
No,
they never have. And I think what Poch is trying to do is try to instill that intensity. Like, that's his goal.
Well, my fingers are crossed for James Sands. My fingers are crossed for Aiden Morris, who I'm excited to see. And, honestly, even, what's his face from Lille. I think that
Tanner Tessman.
Yeah, I mean, like
Leon. He plays for Leon.
Leon.
Yeah.
I always do that. I always mix up those two. Anyway,
Tessman's been great for Leon this year, by the way. He, like, going in end of last season into this season, he's played very well. Yeah.
He's a good player, and he's a truck, man. He's built. He's
yeah, but I wish he would play like a truck. He plays like a regista.
Yeah, I know.
He's like,
I know.
He's like tries to be Pirlo, and he's 6'4" and 200 pounds.
I know. All we want is a destroyer. I'm sorry, you're coming to my side of the conversation now. You know,
Well, just or Rodri. Rodri doesn't fuck people up. He just doesn't allow them to get the ball.
I don't know. I just love a player who fucks people up, man. You know, I wasn't even mad when Caicedo scored that goal against Liverpool. I was like, okay, I love Caicedo, even though he is an asshole and I just hate playing against him. But dude, I would love that guy on my team. It's a Kyle Beckerman special, man. I just
Brother,
love
I am
it.
a Tottenham Hotspur fan. I am familiar with them trying to sign all the central midfielders and failing at all of them.
Yeah, that's
Like
true.
there's literally
They
none that
they
work.
they have not signed any good ones. That's for sure.
Bergvall is good.
Yeah,
Bergvall is
Bergvall's
good,
good. Bergvall's good. Yes, I agree
but
with that.
he's not a defensive player at all.
No.
So
No,
anyway,
but what's his name is okay. Palhinha. Palhinha is okay.
Joao Polina has been great.
Yeah,
Joao
he-
Polina,
You just don't. You just have to.
I have texted Nolan King multiple times because he's a big Bayern fan.
Uh-huh.
I've texted Nolan in multiple times saying thank you.
Yeah,
We appreciate you
yeah. That's
because he's been great.
well. Those two are solid. A solid building block, I think. So,
They need a lot more.
but they do need a lot more.
They need a
Absolutely.
lot more. All right. Last thing in the potpourri. The current win again while starting, like, not even rotating their front line, but like just starting a bunch of teenagers and just saying YOLO.
Yeah. They're pretty good.
And still giving Kayla Sharples missed this game due to injury. It sounds like probably not serious. We'll see, but yeah, they still only gave up like 0.8 xg while really not doing anything offensively until they subbed on Michelle Cooper in like 14 seconds. She scored during a fucking ad break. Come on, NWSL. Come on, do better. Okay. Do we need to do a 30-second ad break during subs? Like, do we need to do this?
Got to get that money, man.
The current have like 3 of the top 10 G plus and XG players in the league, and Michelle Cooper is one of them.
Yeah, that's amazing.
She's awesome. Like, it's just so fun to watch her just come on the field and immediately dart right at. I have to believe it was somewhat jarring to the Angel City defense because they'd been dealing with, Mary Long for 55 minutes, and all of a sudden Michelle Cooper comes in here and you're like, oh, fuck, goal.
Yeah.
So that was good. That was fun. What else? What do we have to look for? Nothing to look for. There's no game this weekend. We don't have to watch Sporting Kansas City this weekend. So
That's good. We have to look for a weekend of no bad soccer. If the U.S. men can just be slightly competent, and other than that, I think that it is a weekend of fall yard chores because there's no soccer.
I did most of mine today. So
look
all the
at you,
leaves are
ahead of
picked
the
up,
game. Oh,
cleaned
damn.
up. Yeah. Well, the leave guy comes on Thursdays, so it's easier for me to do it. I found some time today to do it, but I think that like we're gonna root against whoever. Like Atlanta plays Miami, so go Inter Miami, and the Galaxy play Dallas, so go FC Dallas. That helps our prospects of not winning the wooden spoon. I don't know. I really have no idea.
I don't know. I don't care if we win the win spoon. I wouldn't.
don't either.
I honestly kind of wouldn't mind it. I think it would be hilarious to a degree.
I think the only reason I push against it because we've never won it. We're like the only team that's ever won it, right?
Yeah.
Well, not the only team, but the only original team that's ever won it. I think.
Yeah.
So, Mike will check me on this, I'm sure, in the Discord later. But I think we're the only original team that's never won it. So.
Okay, so that's reason enough to root against winning the spoon.
Right.
I can buy into that. Otherwise, I'm just like embrace the suckage. You know, if you're gonna suck the best anybody's ever sucked before.
Yeah, I mean, do it better than anyone's ever done it before. And on that note, I'm Drew. He's Cody. We'll talk to y'all next week.
Bye.